Chapter 374. Tut-tut. It seemed that the handsome Nongzhu was quite famous in the soul-forming stage. Yu Qianzhou looked at their reactions and fell into deep thought. Man Who looked at Yu Qianzhou with a flicker in his eyes. He was afraid that it was not easy to make Nongzhu's disciple obey him. After thinking for a while, he took out another storage bag from his storage bag and handed it to Yu Qianzhou. He said, "My junior brother was reckless and destroyed the venue of the competition. Here are 10 million upper spiritual stones as compensation. I think you can let us participate in this saber drawing competition." Yu Qianzhou took the storage bag and used his divine sense to make a rough estimate. The number should be right. But it was a little difficult. Let them participate. The people of other sects might have objections and not let them participate. But he didn't want to return the 10 million upper spiritual stones to them. Alas, it was really a dilemma. Just as he was hesitating, Zi suddenly said, "You can only participate if you pay 10 million upper spiritual stones. If you don't have spiritual stones, you can leave." Her words were very rude, very powerful, and very straightforward. Hearing this, Yu Qianzhou was so surprised that he almost couldn't close his mouth. He was ecstatic. When did this stubborn girl become so smart? She cooperated so well. In fact, this was all his own masterpiece. He had educated a simple woman who had never seen the world to think about money. He didn't know how Nongzhu would react if she knew. All the sects looked at each other. The deterrent force of Ziyi's action was still there, so no one stood up to object for the time being. Man Who was stunned. He really took out a bag of spiritual stones from his storage bag and handed it over. Ziyi took it and carefully confirmed the number. Then she nodded to Yu Qianzhou and gave it to him. Yu Qianzhou embarrassedly put the spiritual stones into his storage bag in front of everyone. He smiled awkwardly at Ziyi and said, "Since you said it's okay, let's continue the saber drawing competition." He looked at the crowd with a little guilty conscience. The people from the 4 great clans were speechless. They had casually told a lie and earned another 10 million. This kind of money was a little too easy. However, the people from the 4 great clans naturally wouldn't ruin his show, and all of them flashed back. Supporting Xian Island's Oci shook his head and sighed as he looked at Yu Qianzhou. He was such a good disciple in supporting Xian Island. How did it become like this? It seemed that it was really hard for a rogue cultivator to live in the cultivation world. Maybe he was afraid of being poor. Not to mention that he even took out such a treasure, he had almost reached the point where he couldn't move at the sight of money. Oci sighed and said, "Go back." More than a dozen people from supporting Immortal Island returned to their positions. With Fuxian Island taking the lead, the other sects could only reluctantly retreat. The place became empty again. "Yu Qianzhou, we just handed over the spiritual stones but we haven't started yet. How are we going to calculate it?" Qiu Weiyuan shouted angrily. He and Dongfang Chang'ao hadn't entered the stage yet. Again. Yu Qianzhou have always been fair. Seniors, let's start the time again. Yu Qianzhou hurriedly gestured to Wu Liqing to get ready. He turned back and smiled at Yan Zhuixing and the others. "Brother Yan, please do as you please. After the 2 seniors finish this round, you can just send 1 person to the stage." With another 20 million, Yu Qianzhou didn't say anything else. He turned around and ran back to the stage. The 2 girls followed him. Yan Zhuixing looked at Wu Lishua's back with a complicated gaze. He turned around and led the 7 people to the entrance. There were already a lot of rogue cultivators at the entrance. They all looked at them with disgust. Yan Zhuixing and Man Who turned a blind eye to them, but Man Who's junior brothers were so angry that they gritted their teeth. Even though they were at the late stage of passing tribulation, they didn't have a seat here. If they were arrogant before, it wouldn't be a big deal. But now that they lost to Zi, it was suspicious that they were chased here. They were all masters at the late stage of passing tribulation, so it was hard for them to swallow their anger. Someone immediately transmitted his voice to Man Who. "Eldest senior brother, that Nongzhu is only at the mid-stage of spirit severing. Our master is at the late stage of spirit severing. Besides, this woman is only good at movement. If we really fight, we might be able to defeat her. Big senior brother, we came out this time to humiliate the Chinese cultivation world. Why are you so polite to her and humiliate us?" Man Who looked back at the tall and skinny man and transmitted his voice to him. "Second brother, I'm not afraid of her. Her master, Nongzhu, is a good friend of Bai Changchun. In the whole cultivation world, only Nongzhu hasn't taken an oath. Among the spirit-severing cultivators, only Nongzhu can enter the Chinese cultivation world at any time to disturb us. Master once told me that Nongzhu is used to being lazy and doesn't like to meddle. Besides, he won't make a move because of the other spirit-severing cultivators. Master told us that if we meet him, we should try to be patient and not give him an excuse to make a move. Otherwise we won't be able to defeat him no matter how many people we have. Z is his disciple. If we hurt his disciple, I'm afraid he will have a reason to make a move. That's easy. Master will kill Nongzhu himself. The tall and skinny man said disdainfully. You should know that two masters together are not by Changchun's match. Barbarian Tiger's words made the tall and thin man suddenly become silent. Although there was a big hole in the middle of the field, it didn't seem to affect the participants. Yu Qianzhou was also relieved. The two knives were stuck in the ground. After the accident, they weren't afraid that someone would steal them away. As soon as the timer started, Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Wuyuan used their earth energy to protect themselves. Immediately, everyone put aside the previous incident and focused their attention on the two of them. Yu Qianzhou raised his eyebrows. Under the telepathic connection, the two knives had already started to release their power before the two of them got close. Wong. The two knives seemed to have sensed that someone had ill intentions towards them. They made two sounds again. Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Wuyuan, who were closer, immediately felt a piercing chill in their hearts. What followed was a heart-palpitating aura of death. It was dense and oppressive, making them unable to resist and unable to get rid of it. The two of them were shocked. Only then did they realize that their earth energy protection couldn't withstand it. Yan Zhuixing, who was standing at the gate, was paying attention to the field. Just as the two knives made a sound, his pupils suddenly shrank. His eyes turned blood red in an instant and then disappeared. Everyone's attention was focused on the field. No one noticed the abnormality in his eyes. Yan Zhuixing inadvertently discovered that the two blades actually glowed with an indistinct shadow. Like a wisp of smoke, it curled up and spread out, enveloping a radius of nearly 10 meters. It didn't disperse for a long time, and just happened to include Dongfang Changgao and Qiu Wuyuan within it. What surprised him the most was that he could feel an endless aura of death in the smoke-like shadow with just his eyes. After his demonic body was formed, although he hadn't officially cultivated the great skills in the demonic book, his demonic eye had already formed along with his demonic body. The smoke-like shadow seemed to be his demonic eye's archenemy. The moment it appeared, it stimulated his demonic eye and caused it to show itself. Then he forcefully suppressed it. Yan Zhuixing didn't understand why this happened. He squinted his eyes slightly. Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Wuyuan didn't dare to hesitate. Otherwise, if the time was up, they would have given another 10 million to Yu Qianzhou for nothing. The two of them looked at each other. Almost at the same time, they suppressed the spherical earth energy protection on their bodies. It was as if they were wearing a glowing coat. In a flash they appeared in front of the knives. With their strong willpower, they bit their tongues to resist the dizziness that would hit their nerves. 5 claws shrouded in earth energy reached out and grabbed the handle of the knives. The people from supporting Immortals Island and the 10,000 demons couldn't sit still anymore. One by one they stood up and excitedly hoped that the two of them would succeed. The two of them actually wanted to use their speed to quickly pull the knives out. Naturally, Yu Qianzhou wouldn't let them do as they wished. Otherwise, if the knives were gone, where would he get the knives from? Moreover, once the knives were taken away, it would be too far away and out of his control. He would be exposed immediately. He was afraid that the person who got the knives would immediately be killed by the sudden appearance of the black fire. At that time, if his swindling business was exposed, it would be really inconvenient for him to come out and meet people. Just as the two of them stretched out their claws, a thick black mist emerged from the blade with a whoosh. The protective vigor chi on their bodies immediately made a sizzling sound, almost directly breaking through their protective vigor chi. The two of them were shocked. At a glance, they could tell that this black fog was the same as the black demon that corroded Luo Qingtian's arm. Once it touched their bodies, it would be terrible. Frightened, they quickly retreated. The black fog curled up and spread in the air. The two knives became calm again, but everyone's eyes were focused on them. Many people from supporting Immortals Island and the 10,000 demons sighed. They were so close to success, but they failed at the last moment. Was really a pity. Eldest senior brother, this knife can actually attack people on its own. This is impossible even for an ordinary spiritual treasure. Could it be that this knife is a high-grade spiritual treasure? The tall and thin man behind Manhu was shocked. It's very possible. Didn't they say that this item came from the Eastern Holy Land? Manhu said solemnly. The few of them suddenly became excited. Some people behind them suddenly snorted. The few of them just looked back coldly and didn't say anything. Their master was an expert in the late stage of the soul formation realm. He also had a few spiritual treasures, including a middle-grade one. The few of them had seen it before, but they had never seen a spiritual treasure that could attack automatically. They naturally put this item in the category of high-grade spiritual treasures. I didn't expect it. Eldest senior brother, we must find a way to get this treasure and offer it to master. Old 7, who was beaten by purple dress, said excitedly. This knife is strange. Yan Zhuixing turned around and pointed at his eyes. The few of them understood that he already had the devil eye and could see things that others couldn't. However, Yan Zhuixing's cultivation wasn't at the stage where he could use voice transmission, so it wasn't convenient for him to ask in detail. Man who nodded solemnly and said, spiritual treasures naturally have their own peculiarities. Otherwise they wouldn't be called spiritual treasures. Then he asked the few junior brothers, it seems that they won't be able to get this treasure. It's our turn to send people. Who's going? Chapter 375. I'll go, the lanky second brother said. Be careful. If you can't do it, come back. Don't force it. Man who nodded and instructed. In the field, Dongfang Chang'ao and Xianhuan had already retracted their aura shield. Although the time was not up yet, the two of them felt that there was nothing they could do. If they forced themselves to draw the saber, they might even lose their lives. Each of them sighed and returned to their own tents in their own sections. On the stage, Yu Qianzhou was trustworthy. He held the gong of alarm and stared at the hourglass below until it was completely empty. Only then did he ring the bell to announce the end of the competition. On the other side, the lanky second brother had already slowly entered the field. Yu Qianzhou asked loudly, this round is short of one person. Who wants to go? He asked several times but no one answered. From everyone's expression, it was obvious that no one wanted to go with Yan Zhuixing's people. Yu Qianzhou suddenly felt a little depressed. However, he had no way to force others to go, so he could only announce the start of the competition. The second brother looked around with a trace of disdain on his face. However, he was immediately shocked by the bone-piercing chill coming from the saber. He did not dare to underestimate it and also released his aura shield. However, the aura shield could not stop the aura of death. The second brother immediately felt himself entangled in endless despair. His spirit became illusory, and he wanted to give up this meaningless resistance. His whole body was also swaying. Not good. There's something wrong with the second brother. The senior and junior brothers were shocked. Second brother? Man who saw that the situation was not right. He immediately shouted like a bolt from the blue. The second brother, who was immersed in the illusion, trembled and woke up. He thought, that was close. I was too careless. He steeled his mind and immediately walked toward the saber. With his cultivation, he was naturally much stronger than Dongfang Chang'ao and Xianhuan in resisting the pressure coming from the saber. At this moment, Yu Qianzhou, who was on the stage, shouted, the rules of the sword drawing competition have already been posted outside. Outsiders are not allowed to help in the sword drawing competition. If anyone dares to interfere, they will be declared a failure in accordance with the rules. Man who immediately cupped his hands and apologized, I'm sorry, I came in a hurry and didn't have time to look carefully, please forgive me. Then he turned around and shouted, Old 7, go and find the rules of the convention posted outside. Since they were able to come here, they were naturally aware of the rules of the competition. But it was a pity that the second brother had been too careless earlier, and as the eldest senior brother, Man who naturally couldn't help but remind him. Old 7 understood that eldest senior brother was looking for an excuse to step down, but when he turned around he found that no one behind him made way for him, so he could only teleport out. Second brother also heard these words. He knew that eldest senior brother had lost face in front of so many people because of him. His heart was filled with gratitude and he hardened his heart to pull the knife back. But as soon as he approached the knife, he also encountered the black demon that Dongfang Chang'ao and Xianhuan had encountered before. The transparent protective aura shield flickered under the erosion of the black demon. Second brother was shocked. He didn't expect the black demon to be so powerful. No wonder the two people before retreated as soon as they encountered it. Man Hu and the others naturally saw that this was a sign of rapid consumption of jinqi, and their hearts were in their throats. But this time, Man Hu learned his lesson and no longer shouted loudly. Instead, he transmitted his voice, Second brother, if you can't do it, come back, don't force yourself. Second brother silently shook his head. He had made up his mind to pull out the knife. The experienced people of the various sects also saw that someone might be transmitting his voice to remind him of something. But this was a matter without evidence, and they couldn't say anything if they couldn't find any evidence. Relying on the profound cultivation of the final stage of the crossing tribulation, second brother's protective aura shield almost condensed into a solid form. It was as if he was wearing a glowing glove, and he unexpectedly grabbed the handle of the knife against the black demon. Xianxia's pupils shrank slightly, but he found that someone was staring at him instead of pulling out the knife. When he met that person's gaze, he saw that it was Yan Zhuixing who was staring at him. Xianxia smiled and nodded, but he snorted coldly in his heart. Wanting to pull out the knife like this is too easy. You're forcing me to kill you. Seeing that the knife was about to be pulled out by second brother, the faces of the various sects changed. If this was really the case, then the Chinese cultivation world would lose a lot of face. Although the other party's cultivation was at the final stage of the crossing tribulation, so many people couldn't fight against one person. Moreover, this was in their own territory. Wouldn't it be shameful? Especially the people of Fuxian Island and the 10,000 demons, the leaders of the righteous and demonic sections. Their expressions were even more unsightly. They all regretted that they didn't let the consecrators of their sects personally take action. Just as second brother grabbed the knife handle, a raging black flame suddenly appeared on the body of the knife. In an instant, his entire body was wrapped inside, and the protective aura shield on his body was easily destroyed in an instant. Second brother, come back. Man Hu and the others no longer cared about the rules and shouted in alarm. Ah! Almost at the same time as they shouted, second brother had already flashed out of the black flame with a teleportation, but he still held his head and let out a mournful scream. For a cultivator at the final stage of the crossing tribulation to let out such a miserable scream, one could imagine the pain he was suffering. The people of the various sects all shivered in fear. Although second brother had flashed out of the black flame, he was like a piece of burning wood. The black flame stuck to his body and burned, and he couldn't get rid of it at all. Man Hu and the others flashed over, but they immediately didn't dare to get close to the terrifying power of the black flame. They could only shout and scream from afar as if they had gone crazy. The eyes of the senior and junior brothers were bloodshot as they watched second brother's skin and flesh disappear in the blink of an eye, turning into a skeleton. The skeleton swayed, and in the end even the skeleton collapsed and scattered on the ground. The black flame gradually died out, and a gust of wind blew past, and the scattered bones on the ground immediately withered and turned into flying ashes. The senior and junior brothers were dumbfounded as they looked at second brother's disappearing body. The people of the various sects were dumbfounded as they looked at the two knives. With such power, who could pull them out? Especially Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Weiyuan, the two of them were extremely glad that they had retreated when they saw Black Fiend. If they had really grabbed the knife handle and activated the black flame, they were afraid that they would end up like this person in front of them. The two of them looked at each other silently across the stage. It's over. When Xianxia saw everyone's expression, he suddenly came to a realization and sighed in his heart. With such a commotion, who would dare to pull out the knives? No one would spend money to throw away their lives. The raging black flame on the knives gradually subsided, and they silently stood there as calm as before. But at this moment, everyone could only use two words to describe these two knives. Peerless murder weapons. Man Hu and his junior brothers were now left with 6 people, and they didn't even have the chance to collect second brother's corpse. 6 ferociously stared at Xianxia on the stage. The atmosphere was not good. Although in everyone's eyes Xianxia's character wasn't very good, he had just killed a foreign tribulation-passing realm expert, and gained face for the Chinese cultivation world. At this moment, everyone stood up with a hua sound and coldly stared at Man Hu and the others, supporting Xianxia. The 6 clan elders of the 4 great clans also brazenly appeared on the stage, and stood on either side of Xianxia. Man Hu glanced at the 6 elders, and found that they were all at the late tribulation-passing realm. His eyes flickered. It wasn't that Man Hu was afraid of the 6 of them, but because of Ziyi who was standing beside Xianxia, he had some misgivings. Otherwise, with their cultivation, they would have dared to cause trouble wherever they went. Wu Sihai was speechless. Wherever this brat went, something would happen. They couldn't even guard against him, he was a jinx. Xianxia cupped his hands towards Man Hu and the others and said, I deeply sympathize with what happened to my fellow disciples, but the saber-drawing assembly has a rule. If any accidents occur, I will not be responsible. After saying that, he looked around and said, the next round will continue, that person who is interested can come up and pay spirit stones. Again, who will come? It's more like courting death. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Xianxia. They didn't expect him to be greedy to this extent. In fact, Xianxia didn't have any hope, he was just saying it. What if there were people who wanted treasures more than their lives? Now that he had only obtained 60 million, he was a bit unwilling. saying what if there really was what if. At this moment, Yan Zhuixing slowly stepped forward and said, "Let me try." As he said that, he threw a storage pouch onto the stage. Yu Qianqiu caught the storage pouch and was stunned. Everyone looked at Yan Zhuixing. At this moment, everyone realized that Yan Zhuixing, who was originally at the core formation stage, was now at the middle stage of the nascent soul stage. It had only been a few short years. However, a mocking expression appeared in everyone's eyes. Even someone at the late stage of the passing tribulation couldn't withstand it. Wasn't a nascent soul stage courting death? Man who stepped forward and stopped him and said solemnly, "Young Hall Master, we appreciate your kind intentions but please don't be impulsive." He thought that Yan Zhuixing couldn't swallow his anger because of his second brother's death. However, he didn't know that ever since Yan Zhuixing's demonic eyes were stimulated by the two sabers, he had a strong obsession in his heart. He wanted to compete with the two sabers, and the aura of death that made everyone's heart palpitate made him unable to suppress his passion. Yan Zhuixing said to Man Hu, "State Preceptor, don't worry. I know what I'm doing." Man Hu and the others looked at each other. They didn't know where Yan Zhuixing's confidence came from, but they also knew that Yan Zhuixing had a strong sense of autonomy. Once he decided on something, no one could change his mind. Otherwise he wouldn't be able to form the demonic body. *CK. My enemy. I can't wait for it. This is a good opportunity to kill you so that there won't be any trouble in the future. Yu Qianqiu didn't even look at the contents of the storage pouch and directly stuffed it into his own storage pouch. He waved at Wu Liqing below and said, "Begin, begin." He was anxious to kill Yan Zhuixing. He could ignore the enmity between the two of them, but Yan Zhuixing wouldn't. Yan Zhuixing looked around and his eyes met with Yu Qianqiu again. The latter smiled and made a pleased gesture to him. Yan Zhuixing nodded and no expression could be seen on his face. He directly walked towards one of the sabers. Before he got close, a bone-piercing chill suddenly attacked him. Yan Zhuixing stopped, closed his eyes and opened his arms to welcome the aura of death that followed closely. Indifference, ruthlessness, sternness, despair, and a series of extremely negative auras mixed together to form the aura of death. Yan Zhuixing slowly opened his eyes and turned to look at Yu Qianqiu. There was actually a smile on his face. However, Yu Qianqiu's expression changed. He could feel that the pressure released by the black fire not only had no effect on Yan Zhuixing, but it was all absorbed by Yan Zhuixing's body. Chapter 376. Those who had not personally experienced it might not know how powerful it was, but Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Weiyuan were shocked. Even with their cultivation it was difficult for them to withstand such pressure, but Yan Zhuixing seemed to be completely fine. Although they had not personally experienced it, they also felt that something was wrong. Only now did Yan Zhuixing understand that his devil body could actually restrain the death aura emitted from the blade. After absorbing it into his body, his devil body showed faint signs of strengthening which really surprised him. No wonder he had the urge to try it out. It seemed that these two blades were very suitable for him. Yan Zhuixing's gaze lingered on the two blades. Suddenly he remembered that he had limited time and could not delay any longer, otherwise he would be cheated of spirit stones by that guy again. He walked to the front of the blades with ease. Just as he stretched out his hand, the black aura suddenly erupted from the blade, instantly submerging it in thick black smoke. There were no screams as everyone had imagined. Many people, including Yu Qianqiu, were a little disappointed. Surprisingly, the black aura that was as dense as a thick cloud gradually faded. When it faded a little more, the group of people were stunned when they saw the situation inside. They saw that Yan Zhuixing seemed to be enjoying it very much, like a whale drinking water, absorbing the black aura in big mouthfuls. Man Hu and the others also looked at each other. They knew that Yan Zhuixing had already formed the devil body, but they did not expect the devil body to have such power. In the future, if he really succeeded in cultivating the great technique of the devil book, how terrifying would that be? Yu Qianqiu felt a toothache watching this. You actually used my black aura as oxygen, damn. You have guts. Yan Zhuixing was so comfortable that he almost moaned. The black aura was more beneficial to the devil body than the death aura. He closed his eyes and was enjoying it, when he suddenly had a premonition that a terrible power was about to be released from the blade. Before he could react, there seemed to be some kind of power bursting out of his body. Yan Zhuixing believed that his devil body would not harm him, so he let it freely release. Before Yan Zhuixing could touch the blade, the surging black fire instantly erupted from the blade, and at that moment, a circle of black light appeared around Yan Zhuixing's body at the same time. The black fire that showed unparalleled power just now was actually unable to break through the black light. When the group saw this, they all gasped in disbelief. Xianxia's face twitched even more. He did not expect Black Flame to have a nemesis, and the person who could restrain Black Flame was actually his enemy. What the hell? The black fire trapped the black light, while the black light protected Yan Zhuixing. The black fire and the black light neutralized each other. Just as they suppressed each other, they bounced up again. Yan Zhuixing, on the other hand, stood there with a cold face. His whole person looked evil and awe-inspiring. He glanced at the audience indifferently, as if the suppression of the black fire and black light had nothing to do with him. Anyone who came into contact with his eyes would subconsciously shiver in their hearts. No emotion could be seen in those eyes, and they were icy cold and indifferent to the extreme. It was as if he viewed all living beings as ants. That pair of cold eyes finally met with Xianxia's eyes. Xianxia's heart was pounding, but he still maintained a friendly smile on his face. Maybe Xianxia's smile moved Yan Zhuixing, but it was not the time to draw the blade yet. Yan Zhuixing silently turned around and walked out of the black fire. The evil and awe-inspiring black light also gradually retracted into his body. Oh my god. Is that still a human's gaze? After Xianxia got rid of Yan Zhuixing's gaze, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He thought to himself, this guy's evil aura is too heavy to actually be able to restrain my trump card. It seems like it's better not to provoke him for now. The people from the other sects were a little shocked. Yan Zhuixing was clearly fine, so why did he not want the treasure blade that was within his reach? Even Manhu and the rest felt that it was a little strange. They looked at Yan Zhuixing, who was walking back, with a questioning gaze. The latter said indifferently, "Let's go back." Go back now. Wouldn't second senior brother's death be in vain? Old Seven's gaze was still fixed on the blade. Yan Zhuixing shook his head slightly at Manhu. Manhu did not say much and shouted to the few people, "Listen to young palace lord, go back." As he spoke, he immediately released his flying artifact. After the few people jumped on it, they soared into the sky. Just like that, not only did one person die, but they also lost 30 million upper-grade spirit stones. They came and left in a hurry, causing the people from the other sects to be a little puzzled. So, this business probably wouldn't be able to continue. Xianxia looked around the stage and shouted, "Is there anyone else trying?" After shouting a few times, there was no response, so he added, "After 2 hours, if there is no one else trying, I will personally take back the 2 blades and end this saber-drawing conference." This was the last trace of hope that he was holding on to. Even Ziyi was looking around, hoping that someone would come out and pay. However, before 2 hours were up, the sects started to leave. With one sect taking the lead, the other sects also left one after another. There was no other way. Although the blades were good, they could not take them away. Many of the people who originally wanted to take advantage of Xianxia being alone to snatch the saber gave up on this idea. This saber could actively attack people. Even if they killed Xianxia, they still wouldn't be able to take the saber away. Almost all the sects had left. Only Fuxian Island, 10,000 Demons and Moon Clan, which were closer to the front, did not leave. Xianxia swore some vulgarities that others could not hear clearly. He tore off the big red flower and the red cloth on his body. After seeing the 3 sects, he was slightly stunned. Fuxian Island and 10,000 Demons still had a reason to stay. What were the women from Moon Clan doing here? Did they admire me so much? Earning 70 million in a day was also worth admiring? Bullsh*t. He jumped off the stage and took back the 2 blades that he used to trick people. He called Ziyi and Wu Lixue and left. The Wu clan would naturally arrange for people to clean up the mess. Xianxia. 2 old men's voices and a woman's voice called out at the same time. Were they really looking for me? Xianxia stopped and turned around. He asked confusedly, "Seniors, why are you looking for me?" Needless to say, Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Wuyuan were acquaintances. The woman from Moon Clan was called Hua Rui. Although he was not familiar with her, he knew her. When he went to the demon region to train, she was the leader of Moon Clan. After the 3 shouted, they looked at each other. Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Wuyuan had been entangled for many years. They could almost read each other's minds. They knew what each other wanted to do with just one look. The 2 old men looked at Hua Rui suspiciously. They really could not figure out what she wanted to do. The 3 first cupped their hands at the people from the 4 clans on the stage. Then they led their disciples and walked toward Xianxia. Xianxia and Wu Lixue greeted them. Ziyi, on the other hand, stood there without moving. Indeed, with her cultivation and background, she did not need these people at all. The people from the 3 clans surrounded the 3 of them, but they did not say anything. Xianxia looked left and right. He did not understand what the 3 of them wanted. He thought to himself, Are they going to let me do something because I made some money? With the wealth of these 3 clans, they did not need to collect protection fees. In the end, it was Xuanhuan who said cheerfully, "Brother Yu, I would like to invite you to 10,000 demons as a guest. Would you like to do me the honor?" "Ah, Senior Qiu, you are too polite," Yu Qianqiu replied, but he immediately thought of what Xuanhuan said about buying a knife. It probably had something to do with this. Just as he did not know how to reject, he suddenly saw Hua Rui staring at Ziyi. He quickly took the opportunity to ask Xuanhuan, "Senior Hua, do you know Ziyi?" Xuanhuan's face twitched and he cursed the little fox in his heart. Hua Rui came back to her senses and smiled. "No, I don't." Her eyes were still staring at Ziyi from time to time. "Senior Hua, why are you looking for me?" Yu Qianqiu was confused. Nothing. As soon as Hua Rui said that, she stunned herself. Why did she stop him for no reason? She immediately changed her words and said, "Nothing important. On behalf of the Moon Clan, I would like to invite you to visit the Moon Clan." As soon as she said that, Dongfang Chang'ao and Xuanhuan were both stunned. The Moon Clan was made up of women and they never invited men casually. Even if they did invite men occasionally, they would only invite people of high moral standing in the cultivation world. Why would they invite someone with bad character like Yu Qianqiu? The two of them looked at each other and thought to themselves, something's wrong. Yu Qianqiu naturally would not suspect that he was a bad person. However, he had also heard that the Moon Clan was not a place where men could go casually. He was stunned and said, Yu Qianqiu would not dare to reject Senior Hua's invitation. However, Yu Qianqiu is a man. It might be inconvenient for me to go. Bring your female companion with you. Of course there won't be a problem. Hua Rui smiled and pointed at Ziyi. Dongfang Chang'ao and Xuanhuan were suddenly enlightened. It turned out that the person the Moon Clan invited wasn't Yu Qianqiu, but this mysterious woman. However, they were not familiar with this woman, so they used Yu Qianqiu as an excuse. Yu Qianqiu understood what she meant. It seemed that she was targeting Ziyi. He couldn't help but look at Ziyi a few more times. However, Ziyi stared at Hua Rui and said, "We can go. How many spiritual stones can you take out?" Everyone instantly fell silent. Very quiet, Yu Qianqiu's face twitched again and again. This girl is even more shameless than me. Someone invited you as a guest and you want them to pay? This logic was unprecedented. He was also struck speechless by the lightning. How many spiritual stones do you need? Hua Rui asked with a stiff face. Is 20 million enough? Ziyi asked Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu opened his mouth wide. He felt a little dazed and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sister. Even if you want to get money, you have to look at the occasion. Even if you want to embarrass yourself, you don't have to do it like this. Even if you want to, don't do it now. He didn't speak and Ziyi thought he agreed. She turned around and said, 20 million. She didn't forget to add to Hua Rui, 20 million top-grade spiritual stones. Yu Qianqiu couldn't afford to be embarrassed. He was afraid that she would say something else. He hurriedly bowed to Dongfang Chang'ao and said, Senior Dongfang, why are you looking for me? Dongfang Chang'ao, who was staring at Ziyi in a daze, came back to his senses. His expression became solemn again. He said, Yu Qianqiu, follow me back to supporting Xian Island. I have something to discuss with you. Yu Qianqiu had a faint smile on his face. I'm no longer a disciple of supporting Xian Island. Why are you still talking to me like this? It's as if I have to go. He immediately shook his head and said, let's discuss it here. There's no need to go to supporting Xian Island. Yu Qianqiu, what's wrong with supporting Xian Island? Why are you avoiding it like this? Sihai came out from behind and shouted. Logically speaking, Dongfang Chang'ao was still under his control. However, when it came to handling outside matters, Dongfang Chang'ao was better at it. Therefore he didn't say anything. But now, he couldn't help it because he was one of the people who wanted to recall Yu Qianqiu back to supporting Xian Island. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and didn't say anything. Sihai snorted coldly, waved his hand and walked away. Dongfang Chang'ao frowned and said, Yu Qianqiu, Aunt Jiu asked me to find you. She wants you to go back to supporting Xian Island. Are you going? Yu Qianqiu still shook his head and said, Senior Dongfang, please send my regards to Aunt Jiu. If there's a chance, I'll definitely pay her a visit. Dongfang Chang'ao let out a deep breath and said, Aunt Jiu asked me to ask you if you still remember a promise you made in the past. If you remember, you have to go back to supporting Xian Island. Aunt Jiu wants you to fulfill your promise. Chapter 377. The flying artifact broke through the sky and flew towards the East Sea. Only 7 of the 8 people were left. Their faces were gloomy and looked out of place with the white clouds outside. Big brother, those people are still following us. Let me go and kill them. Old 7 looked at the 3 flying artifacts and said angrily. When they came from the East Sea, the people from the Cultivation Alliance immediately followed them. Now that they returned, they were still following them. It seemed that they would not stop monitoring them until they returned to the East Sea. Now is not the time to provoke conflict. The cultivators of the various countries are gathering people. After a large number of people arrive, we will settle the score with them. Second brother's death must be avenged. Man whose face was pale. He was gritting his teeth when he suddenly found that Yan Zhuixing was on the verge of falling. It seemed that he could not stand stably. He immediately supported him and asked, "Young palace master, are you injured?" They looked at him in surprise. Was the calmness from before just an act? Yan Zhuixing looked back at the flying artifact that was following them from afar. Just as he turned his head, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face instantly turned pale. What made Man Hu and the others shocked was that when the blood Yan Zhuixing spat out fell on the bottom of the flying artifact, it actually emitted black smoke and quickly dried up into a scab. "Were you injured by the saber?" Man Hu asked. "My demonic body seems to be able to restrain that saber. However, my demonic body has just formed and is not stable yet. When I was defending, I was accidentally invaded by the fire poison. Fortunately, the demonic body suppressed the fire poison and did not spread." Yan Zhuixing's face was pale as he said, "After going back, I will speed up the cultivation of the demonic book. I must get those 2 sabers." After half a day, they successfully returned to the everlasting island. Yan Zhuixing did not say much and directly flew into the depths of the mountains on the island. The senior and junior brothers looked at each other in the sky. They knew that he went to cultivate the demonic technique. Man Hu and the others thought of the shocking technique in the demonic book and felt a chill in their hearts. Old Third, who had been silent all this time, asked, "Big brother, this demonic book is a treasure that Master has kept for many years. Why did you say that you accidentally found it in the inner palace? Also, although Master told us to look for people who can build a devil body, why did you give the devil book to him to cultivate? If Master investigates this matter, I'm afraid." Man Hu looked at his junior brothers and revealed a satisfied smile. These junior brothers clearly knew that what he did was inappropriate, but they didn't say anything. This trust was very precious. But thinking of the dead second brother, Man Hu said with some sadness, "Third brother, Master treated us like his own father. How could I do such a thing behind Master's back?" Sigh. When Master found out that Yan Zhuixing had formed the devil body, he was so happy that he almost came to China in person. However, he was bound by the poison oath, so he had no choice but to accept my will and pass the devil's book to Yan Zhuixing, and let us listen to Yan Zhuixing's commands. This. The others were speechless. Although they didn't say it out loud, their expressions were filled with doubt. "There are some things that you guys don't know. However, now that Yan Zhuixing has formed his demonic body, it's time for me to tell you guys." Man Hu looked at his junior brothers and slowly said, "The ancient devil path is true, and the passage to the devil world is also true. This is because the devil path was too powerful in the past, even the immortal and netherworld had to bow down to them. Who would have thought that such a powerful devil path would be provoked by the immortal and netherworld? As for what happened, even Master doesn't know. In short, the passage to the devil world was sealed by the immortal and netherworld. But the devil monarch of the devil world was also not an ordinary person. After discovering that something was wrong when the passage was about to be sealed, he forcefully used a great technique to capture a devil path pawn and send him out. The pawn that was sent out had the devil's book, bestowed by the devil monarch. The others looked at each other in dismay. Third brother frowned and said, "Eldest brother, did Master tell you this? Why didn't Master tell us?" Third brother, listen to me slowly, you will naturally understand after listening. Man Hu continued, "Since the immortal and netherworld dared to do this, they naturally wouldn't let the people of the devil world have the opportunity to open the passage from the inside. The devil path pawn carried the devil's book, and was entrusted by the devil monarch to look for people in the mortal world who could successfully cultivate the devil's book. Once someone could successfully cultivate the devil's book, they would naturally be able to find the sealed passage to the devil world. With the power of the devil's book, there would definitely be an opportunity to open the passage from the outside. Since that is the case, why didn't the devil path pawn cultivate the devil's book himself, but instead looked for people to cultivate it?" Fourth brother was puzzled. "If you want to cultivate the devil's book, you must first build the devil's body." Man Hu sighed, At that time the situation was urgent, and the devil monarch didn't have time to choose a more suitable candidate. He had no choice but to send the devil's path pawn. But the devil's path pawn's talent was limited, and he was unable to build the devil's body, so how could he cultivate the devil's book? After the immortal and netherworld joined hands to seal the passage, they wantonly slaughtered the remaining devil path people in the mortal world. And at that time, without the support of the devil world, how could the devil's path people be a match for the immortal and netherworld? Almost all of them were killed, and from then on the devil's path became extinct. That devil's path pawn, who was entrusted with the heavy responsibility, endured humiliation and went through untold hardships to survive. After the immortal and netherworld stopped paying attention to the mortal world, he quietly looked for people who could build the devil's body and cultivate the devil's book. Seventh brother, who was a bit hot-tempered, was stunned. Then how did the devil's book fall into the hands of master? Seventh brother didn't understand, but the others thoughtfully looked at each other and seemed to have understood something. Man who looked at them and explained with a smile, that devil's path pawn's cultivation hasn't reached the stage of immortality, and it's also impossible for him to live from ancient times until now. He was entrusted with the heavy responsibility of the devil king, so he naturally had to find someone to succeed him. Before he died, he found a successor, and at the price of never being able to reincarnate and having his soul scattered, he used the devil's curse of the devil's path secret technique on the successor. If the successor doesn't fulfill his last wish, he must find a suitable successor to continue, otherwise he will face the punishment of the devil's curse, and at that time he will neither live nor die. And that devil's curse will also be passed down from generation to generation. Seventh brother was stunned. He wasn't a fool and roughly understood what was going on. He couldn't help but ask, "Eldest senior brother, do you mean that master is the successor of this generation who has been entrusted with a heavy responsibility? Then wouldn't master also have that devil's curse planted on him?" "That's right." Man who solemnly said, "I have already promised to inherit master's heavy responsibility. If master is gone, the devil's curse will automatically descend on me." Everyone was shocked when they heard this, and they all looked at their eldest senior brother in a daze. Man who waved his hand and said with a smile, "However, this matter is really unexpected. At that time I saw that Yen Zhuixing's will was firm, so I had the idea of letting him try to build a devil's body. I really didn't expect that after countless years of failure, he would actually succeed. I have to say that it is a coincidence. Since it has been successful, then is the devil's curse on master already broken?" Fifth brother asked. Man who shook his head with a wry smile, "How could it be so easy? There are only two ways to break the devil's curse. First, after the devil world's passage is opened, the devil's curse will naturally disappear. Second, after the devil book cultivator reaches the late devil king stage, he can use a great method to help the successor build a devil's body. Once the successor's devil's body is formed, the devil's curse will naturally disappear. Of course, when the devil king uses a great method to help the successor build a devil's body, it is almost impossible to fail. Unlike when we use the 7-star blood-piercing great method, it is almost impossible to survive. In that case, Yen Zhuixing needs to smoothly cultivate to the late devil king stage to be able to break the devil's curse on master. Sixth brother asked. "That's right. Therefore, master wants us to listen to Yen Zhuixing's command. The purpose is to help him eliminate the interference and smoothly cultivate the devil book." Man who said suddenly looked at everyone and sighed, "It's just that if it's like this, junior brothers will have to suffer. This matter originally has nothing to do with you. Eldest senior brother, please don't say that. Master and we are like father and son. It is our duty to serve master. How can there be any grievances?" Third brother stopped him. The others also said similar words. Man who tightly pursed his lips, looked at his junior brothers and nodded with gratification. The third brother frowned and said, "Eldest senior brother, there's a troublesome matter. If we want to avenge second senior brother, we naturally have to kill the Xianxia. However, Nongzhu's female disciple has always been by his side. Seeing how she listens to Xianxia's words, once we make a move, Nongzhu's disciple will definitely help. Although we are not afraid of her, if Nongzhu is involved, then it will be troublesome. Second brother, we can't die in vain. I will immediately send a message to master. I believe that after master knows of second brother's death, he will clear the obstacles for us to take revenge. Master will definitely personally go to the South Sea Purple Bamboo Forest to negotiate with Nongzhu." Man whose eyes flickered. After saying that, he flashed to the peak of a mountain, took out a piece of jade, found the direction, and muttered softly, in the distant Rong Empire, a snow-capped mountain towered into the clouds, the cold wind whistled under the gloomy clouds and snowflakes fluttered in the air. There was not a trace of green, nor a trace of life. Above the gloomy clouds, on the peak of the snow-capped mountain, the sun was shining brightly, the mountain was covered with a layer of ice, and under the sunlight, the mountain was draped in 7 colors. In such a deserted place, there was an old man with white hair and beard sitting cross-legged on the ice peak, his body only wrapped in a thin snow-white robe. He was not afraid of the cold. Next to him, there was a snow-white python, curled up into a ball and sleeping soundly. The strangest thing was that there was a pair of sparkling and translucent horns on the snake's head. If a knowledgeable person saw this, they would know that this was a rare spirit beast, snow flood dragon. At this time, the old man who was sitting cross-legged like a sculpture suddenly opened his eyes. He was silent for a moment, then as if he had heard some unfortunate news, his eyes suddenly widened, his eyes flickered, and he suddenly stood up. A huge imposing aura surged out from his body. The sleeping snow flood dragon quickly opened its eyes and raised its head, its bright red eyes blinking, revealing a frightened expression. Its coiled body brought along a white shadow, and like a divine dragon, it quickly drilled into the sea of clouds, disappearing without a trace. Ah! The old man suddenly let out a painful howl, and a majestic aura surged out like a gas. The entire mountain peak immediately felt as if a strong earthquake had occurred. The ice covering it collapsed with a loud rumble and slid down the mountain. The thick gloomy clouds that floated over the mountainside, with the mountain peak as the center, stirred up undulating waves, and dispersed in all directions. The imposing aura was truly astonishing. The old man suddenly swung his arms, and his whole body rapidly broke through the sky, bringing with it a sharp whistle of friction with the air, and disappeared into the distant sky in the blink of an eye. Chapter 378. Fuxian Island, the place that Yu Qianqiu hadn't been to for a long time. When Dongfang Chang'ao said that Ma Jiugu wanted him to fulfill his promise, he knew that he had to come, and it was hard for him to refuse. He might feel that he didn't know anyone from Fuxian Island, but Ma Jiugu was an exception. Back then he couldn't bear the torment of time anymore, so he knelt down to Ma Jiugu in exchange for a starting point, but it also made him bear a promise that he had to repay. Yu Qianqiu didn't deny that he could go back on his word, but for a man like him there was a difference. If he didn't return it he wouldn't return it, but if he had to return it he couldn't avoid it. What was the difference? Look at your conscience, there was no reason. Dongfang Chang'ao drove a flying artifact and brought Yu Qianqiu, Ziyi and a group of people from Fuxian Island back. On the way, Osihai was still panting with anger, but Yu Qianqiu was too lazy to pay attention to him. This kind of guy was used to being flattered at home and he lacked stimulation. Ziyi silently stayed by Yu Qianqiu's side. She discovered that Yu Qianqiu's expression was somewhat absent-minded. She didn't know what he was thinking about. This was the first time she had seen such a thing happen to Yu Qianqiu. Fuxian Island had already received the news in advance that Yu Qianqiu was coming back. No one knew who leaked the news, but some of the younger generation disciples immediately spread the news around the island. The expelled Yu Qianqiu is coming back. The An Kuangtsung Yu Qianqiu that even ancestor Qingfu couldn't catch is coming back. The Yu Qianqiu who saved the disciples of various sects in the demon ghost domain is coming back. The Yu Qianqiu who defeated a competitor in the cultivation pavilion is coming back. The Yu Qianqiu who created the star flame fire technique is coming back. The Yu Qianqiu who killed the grandson of sect master An Kuangtsung and the son of Daluo sect master is coming back. I heard that Daluo sect master Luo Qingtian was also defeated by Yu Qianqiu and lost an arm. Who doesn't know about this? The saber drawing assembly, this time is hosted by Yu Qianqiu. There were even a few female disciples hiding in their rooms discussing with stars in their eyes. The first girl exclaimed, "Really? Senior Yu Qianqiu who cultivates the Guiyuan sword technique, is coming back? I don't know if I have the chance to come into contact with him. I've been cultivating the Guiyuan sword technique for such a long time, but I always feel that I can't unleash its power. I really want to ask him for some pointers." The second girl said with disdain, "I also want him to give me pointers. But he is no longer a disciple of supporting Immortal Island. Why should he give us pointers? I heard that he is a guest invited by supporting Immortal Island." The third girl said with regret, "Senior Yu Qianqiu is the person I admire the most. He didn't do anything wrong to supporting Immortal Island, so why did the sect expel him? Now, with his ability, he is still famous in the cultivation world without the support of the world's #1 sect." Ding Girl rubbed her chin and said, "You are not the only one who admires Senior Yu Qianqiu. Who in our supporting immortal island doesn't admire him? Sigh. How many years does it take for such a person to appear in supporting immortal island? But he was chased away by the sect. I suspect that someone is jealous of his talent and is purposely making things difficult for him. Yes. The few girls nodded and agreed with what Ding Girl said. The higher-ups of supporting Immortal Island heard similar discussions from the young disciples everywhere they went. They didn't know whether to laugh or cry. These young people all remembered Xianxia's good points, but consciously didn't accept their idol's shortcomings. It seemed that Xianxia's reputation as a scum of the cultivation world, and a madman, was very famous. Didn't they hear of it? However, it was understandable. Xianxia didn't look very old, but he had done many things that young people wanted to do but couldn't. Furthermore, any of the things he did could make the young people with dreams famous. What's more, he did so many things on one person. Actually, let alone the young people, how many of the older generation didn't secretly admire him? Otherwise they wouldn't have called back Xianxia this time. If Xianxia heard these discussions, it was unknown what he would think. Presumably he would also sigh. After so many years, he rarely stopped to rest and had always been bouncing around tirelessly. He actually did so many things, and it could be said that his hard work wasn't in vain. Actually, he didn't only do these things in the open and in the dark. A man who didn't know tiredness could also do some things. When they arrived at supporting Immortal Island, Zi sized it up curiously. She had also heard of this world's #1 sect. Xianxia looked at the island below expressionlessly. The thick fog on the island opened up a path. The flying immortal treasure went through and directly flew to the square in front of Penglai Pavilion and landed. On the peak of the alchemy pavilion, Guan Weiwu threw off his image of an alchemy addict. He stood in front of the cliff of the alchemy pavilion and watched the flying immortal treasure land with his own eyes. He sighed softly and said, "Is he back? Won't you know if you go and see for yourself? After all, they are master and disciple. I don't think Xianxia is a heartless person." Yang Qian, who was standing beside him, laughed. Yang Qian also didn't expect that the kid who liked to wander around in the past would actually make such a big name in the cultivation world. You really can't judge a book by its cover. Sigh. He can't blame others. I, as his master, have never given him anything or taught him anything. Even when he was about to be expelled from the sect, I didn't stand out to protect him. Guan Weiwu looked in the direction of Penglai Pavilion and laughed bitterly. Cutting off ties. I, as his master, have hurt his heart. It's fine if I don't go. In front of Penglai Pavilion, Xianxia looked around and was instantly shocked. He could see supporting Immortal Island disciples everywhere. When he was in supporting Immortal Island, he had never seen so many disciples loitering around Penglai Pavilion. Could it be that supporting Immortal Island secretly recruited many disciples? But why didn't he hear 100 Charm Beauty mention it before? Xianxia looked around suspiciously. It seemed that all the people walking around were staring at him. Something was wrong. As he thought of this, he also became vigilant. Zi nodded secretly. The world's #1 sect was indeed the world's #1 sect. Just by looking around, there were actually so many low-level disciples. Let's go. The sect leader and the others are waiting for you in Penglai Pavilion. Dongfang Chang'ao said as he put away his flying immortal treasure. Osihai had already gone in without saying a word. Is Anjio here too? Xianxia asked. Dongfang Chang'ao looked up at Penglai Pavilion and said, Anjio should be here too. Let's go up and wait. Xianxia also looked up and said with an expressionless face, How would I dare to trouble Anjio? I'd better go to Mulberry Garden and pay my respects to her personally. Elder Dongfang, please inform her first so that there won't be any misunderstandings. With that said, he unsheathed the long sword on his back and flew towards Mulberry Garden. Zi also followed. Dongfang Chang'ao was stunned and immediately understood that he didn't want to meet the sect leader and the others. He looked up and saw that Feng Xiangtian had already appeared in front of the window with a gloomy face. This brat didn't give me any face at all. Dongfang Chang'ao shook his head helplessly and sent a message in the direction of Mulberry Garden. He then entered Penglai Pavilion. The disciples near Penglai Pavilion were slowly walking in the direction of Mulberry Garden as if nothing had happened. Mulberry Garden was still lush and lush. In the inner garden, Lan Bingxue had already helped Ma Jiao to stand in the courtyard. Xianxia and Zi landed in the outer garden. To show respect to Ma Jiao, the two ignored the gazes of others and directly walked into the inner garden. As soon as he saw Ma Jiao, Xianxia immediately bowed and said, Xianxia greets Aunt Jiao. After getting up, he didn't even look at Lan Bingxue. He didn't even think about putting on an act towards this woman who had hurt his woman. Sooner or later he would settle the score with her. Lan Bingshua's expression slightly changed. Ma Jiao nodded and smiled. It's good that you came. Then she looked at Ziyi and asked, You must be Miss Ziyi? With this question, it seemed that Ziyi's performance in the saber drawing assembly had made her famous in the world. Ziyi didn't speak. No matter how high Ma Jiao's seniority was, it couldn't be higher than her. Yu Qianqiu quickly replied respectfully, Aunt Jiao, she is indeed Ziyi. Ma Jiao didn't mind. She looked at Yu Qianqiu and said with a smile, This old woman won't talk nonsense, lest you youngsters talk too much to me. Yu Qianqiu, that year in this garden you owed this old woman a promise. Today this old woman summoned you to fulfill this promise. Are you willing? Elder Dongfang has already informed me. Since this junior has come, ninth aunt, please do not hesitate to instruct me. As long as this junior is able to do it, I will definitely do my best to accomplish it, Yu Qianqiu said respectfully. Good. This old woman didn't misjudge you. You are indeed a trustworthy and responsible man. Ma Jiao nodded and said with a smile, What I want you to do is very simple. This old woman wants you to rejoin supporting Immortal Island. This. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. When he came here he had thought of the worst and even made all sorts of plans. He didn't expect that he would rejoin supporting Immortal Island. Ziyi also looked at Yu Qianqiu in a daze. How was it possible for Senior Bai's disciple to rejoin supporting Immortal Island? What? Is this request making things difficult for you? Ma Jiao thought that Yu Qianqiu was embarrassed and said with a smile, Let bygones be bygones. Don't take it to heart. If anyone dares to gossip, this old woman will be the first to deal with him. Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly and said, Aunt Jiao, it's not that I don't want to agree, but this junior can't. I already have a master, so how can I join supporting Immortal Island? Ziyi also nodded and said, Yes, he can't join supporting Immortal Island. If he does that and offends his master, I'm afraid that supporting Immortal Island will disappear from the cultivation world. Ma Jiao looked at Lan Bingshua speechlessly. She wasn't speechless because of Yu Qianqiu's rejection, but because of Ziyi's arrogant tone. If someone else had said this, Ma Jiao would have treated it as nonsense. However, it was different when Ziyi said it. Everyone in the cultivation world knew that Ziyi could easily deal with 7 experts at the late stage of the crossing tribulation stage. There was also her mysterious master, Mr. Nongzhu, and the unheard of South Sea purple bamboo forest. Everything indicated that Ziyi's background wasn't simple. Now that she said such words, the so-called master of Yu Qianqiu might really be someone that supporting Immortal Island couldn't afford to offend. Yu Qianqiu, can you tell this old woman who your master is? Ma Jiao asked. This. Yu Qianqiu thought for a while and said slowly, Although you haven't met my master, when we were training in the demon domain, my master injured you and the seniors of supporting Immortal Island. What? He's your master? Ma Jiao shuddered when she heard this. The terrifying scene from back then was still deeply engraved in her mind. A thunderous and sonorous divine sense had instantly injured a group of people. That person's cultivation was unimaginable. That person was an invincible existence. Chapter 379. Aunt Jiao, please keep this secret for me. Yu Qianqiu bowed and said, Aunt Jiao, is there anything else you want me to do? As long as it's within my capabilities, I will do my best. Ma Jiao looked at him with a complicated expression. She didn't expect him to find such a powerful backer. No wonder he dared to be so unscrupulous in the cultivation world. She shook her head and said, I can't think of anything for the time being. Stay on supporting Immortal Island for a day and I'll let you know when I think of something. Yu Qianqiu hesitated for a moment before he said, I would like to do something to offset the promise I made back then. I wonder if you, Aunt Jiao, would agree? This promise was like a fishbone stuck in his throat. He really wanted to resolve this matter as soon as possible. Otherwise, others might use it against him in the future. Oh, what is it? Ma Jiao's eyes lit up. Why don't you tell me? If I help you, Aunt Jiao, increase your lifespan by another 150 years, I wonder if I can cancel out this promise? Yu Qianqiu slowly said. When these words were spoken, everyone was greatly shocked. Could he, Yu Qianqiu, really do something as heaven-defying as allowing someone to live for another 150 years for no reason? Even Ziyi looked at him with a face full of shock. Ma Jiao's chest heaved up and down and her breathing became rapid. She didn't have much time left to live. What kind of concept would it be if she could live for another 150 years? Perhaps she would have a chance to break through to that legendary realm. After calming down, her eyes flickered and she said, "I won't use your promise to tie you down for the rest of your life. Rest for a day and let me think about it. I'll give you an answer tomorrow." "In that case I'll take my leave." Yu Qianqiu bowed and left the mulberry garden with Ziyi. After watching the two leave, Lan Bingxue turned her head and said, "Aunt Jiu, why didn't you agree to him? If he can really extend your lifespan by another 150 years, it will be a great thing." 150 years of lifespan? Ma Jiugu murmured with a confused expression. Lan Bingxue stayed silent with her for a while, then suddenly asked in a low voice, "Aunt Jiu, who is Yu Qianqiu's master?" When she was supporting Ma Jiugu just now, when Yu Qianqiu mentioned the origin of his master, Ma Jiugu's body trembled. She could clearly feel it. She really wanted to know who could make Ma Jiugu so shocked. "I've fought him, but I've never met him." Ma Jiugu gave a simple reply. Although she kept Lan Bingxue by her side, she wouldn't let Lan Bingxue know about some matters that involved the core of the sect. She didn't know why. Lan Bingxue lowered her head and stopped asking. Knowing that Ma Jiugu would give him an answer tomorrow, Yu Qianqiu instantly felt relieved. It was better to settle this matter earlier than later. Now that he was in a good mood, he led Ziyi out of the mulberry garden, letting Ziyi appreciate the 10,000 fragrance garden that was full of spirit grasses. "Are these all spirit grasses?" Ziyi's pretty face melted. Smelling the fragrance, looking at the grass, vines, flowers and willows all over the mountains and fields, her face bloomed with innocent curiosity. Compared to the monotonous purple bamboo forest, the scenery here was much more vivid and lively. "Yes, they are all spirit grasses." Yu Qianqiu nodded his head. In his heart he thought, "This is nothing. If there is a chance, I will let you go to my territory and see what is called the most complete variety of spirit grasses." Now that he was in the 10,000 fragrance garden, he naturally had to go to the main hall, where his woman was. At the entrance of the main hall, Fernan and Furong had been waiting for a long time. There was no one around, so it seemed that they had been asked to leave. The expressionless former came back from Penglai Pavilion. He was originally with the head and the others, but who knew that Yu Qianqiu did not give face to the head of the #1 sect in the world and went directly to see Ma Jiugu. Fernan had to go back to the 10,000 fragrance garden to wait for Yu Qianqiu. He had already decided in his heart that if Yu Qianqiu did not come to the 10,000 fragrance garden to see him after he came to the mulberry garden, he would carefully consider the relationship between this guy and his daughter. Furong's face was full of joy. Fernan was afraid that his daughter would be too happy and be seen by others about Yu Qianqiu's return, so he specially blocked the news from her. It was not until just now that he told her, and he also gave her a lot of instructions. Senior Fei." Yu Qianqiu saluted awkwardly. Since he was caught in bed last time, he felt that the 3 words Senior Fei were not smooth no matter how he called him. Hearing this, Fernan also had a strange expression. He nodded slightly and his eyes fell on Ziyi. Furong called out cheerfully, "Yu Qianqiu." Her voice was still so pleasant to hear. Yu Qianqiu smiled at her. In public it was not good to show too much affection. "Come in and talk." After Fernan finished speaking, he was just about to turn around, but his body stopped, and he looked at the outside of Myriad Fragrance Garden with a twitching expression. Several people also looked over and Yu Qianqiu was also stunned. He saw that in the forest outside Myriad Fragrance Garden, there were flying swords flying everywhere, and there were probably no less than thousands of them. "Damn. What are they doing?" Yu Qianqiu looked at Fernan suspiciously. Fernan said in a deep voice, "You will know when you go out and take a look." He naturally had to listen to his future father-in-law's words. Yu Qianqiu immediately turned around and walked out of Myriad Fragrance Garden, and Ziyi followed him. He wouldn't know if he didn't look, but he was shocked when he saw that there were probably no less than 400 to 500 people, and all of them were controlling the swords. Some were controlling 2 or 3 swords, and some were controlling more than 10 swords at the same time. No wonder there were so many flying swords flying everywhere. Yu Qianqiu said blankly, "Guiyuan sword technique? Since when did this place become a training ground? Since when did Guiyuan sword technique become popular on Fuxian Island?" As soon as Yu Qianqiu appeared, the flying swords flying everywhere were all collected, and hundreds of excited eyes stared at him. Someone took the lead and shouted, "Greetings, Senior Yu Qianqiu." Then it was a mess and cheers came one after another. Everyone gathered around as well. Fernan, who was in front of the main hall, shook his head and smiled bitterly, but Furong's face was full of pride for her man. "You all know me?" Yu Qianqiu pointed at himself and asked in shock. He thought to himself, "Why don't I know any of you?" Everyone shook their heads and nodded, and their eyes were burning. This is the legendary idol. Yu Qianqiu was confused and he looked at Purple Dress, but it seemed like Purple Dress also didn't understand why these people shook their heads and nodded. At this moment, a disciple plucked up his courage and came over to greet. We are the younger generation disciples of Fuxian Island, and we have long heard of Senior's great name. I heard that Senior is cultivating Guiyuan sword technique, and we are the same, but it is difficult for us to unleash the power of Senior, so we specially rushed over to meet Senior, hoping that Senior can give us pointers. Fans. Yu Qianqiu looked at everyone's burning eyes, and two words suddenly popped up in his head. Looking at these people again, some were hugging a few swords and some were hugging a large pile of swords. This Guiyuan sword technique is really hard to cultivate, and even their weapons are a lot more than others. It was obvious that these were some low-level disciples, and they didn't even have the money to buy storage bags. Speaking of storage bags, Tan family, one of the 4 major families, made them. Last time they ruthlessly took a large pile from Tan family head. Yu Qianqiu coughed, cleared his throat and said loudly, I also didn't expect that there are so many people cultivating Guiyuan sword technique like me, and I came in a hurry so I didn't prepare any greeting gifts for you. How about this? He took out 2 storage bags from his storage bag, pointed at 2 people in front of him, smiled and waved, come here. The 2 disciples who were pointed at suddenly became excited, and with a pile of swords in their hands, they excitedly walked in front of their idol and bowed, Senior. No need to be so polite, no need to be so polite. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and smiled amiably. In these 2 storage bags, one contains spirit stones and the other contains storage bags. You 2 distribute the things inside. As long as someone is present, each person will get 10 pieces of upper-grade spirit stones, and 1 storage bag. Go. With that said, he handed over the 2 storage bags. Wow. Hundreds of people immediately became excited, so excited. Since when did they get 10 pieces of upper-grade spirit stones? Not even 1 piece. Moreover, each person was given a storage bag, which was exactly what they needed. No wonder he was the legendary Senior Yu. This generosity, this amiable attitude that didn't put on airs, ordinary people couldn't be compared to him. The 2 disciples quickly put the swords in their hands on the ground, took the storage bags with both hands and bowed, thank you, Senior. Then they turned around and distributed the bags. Hundreds of people expressed their gratitude in unison, attracting the attention of those with high cultivation on supporting Immortal's Island. When the 2 disciples' divine senses entered the storage bags, they were shocked. So many spirit stones, so many storage bags. Both of them looked back at Yu Qianqiu at the same time. There was a beautiful lady beside him. No wonder he was the legendary Senior Yu. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, quickly distribute the bags. The 2 disciples immediately got busy. They distributed the storage bags one by one, 10 pieces of upper-grade spirit stones. The disciples who got the items were also aware. They excitedly put the flying swords and spirit stones into the storage bags, then stood at the side to prevent the repeated distribution. After all, there were still some big sex teachings inside. When Yu Qianqiu saw the disciples who got the items were happy, he was also happy. A few hundred people, 10 spirit stones for each person is only a few thousand pieces. A few thousand pieces of upper-grade spirit stones and hundreds of storage bags can buy the hearts of a few hundred people. Even if he was short of money, he can't be stingy, no matter whether the hearts of the people he bought will be useful in the future. It is definitely worth it. Ziyi saw that Yu Qianqiu was actually distributing the spirit stones. She was worried. She couldn't understand why he did this. It is not easy to earn some money. The liveliness outside made Furong also excited. She wanted to come out and share with Yu Qianqiu. But when she remembered her father's instructions, she was afraid that it will have a bad influence on Yu Qianqiu. She still held back. But Ferdinand's face turned ashen. This kid is too arrogant. He actually openly bought the hearts of the people in Fuxian Island. He doesn't know what low-key is. The spirit stones and storage bags were distributed very quickly. The 2 disciples sent the rest back. Yu Qianqiu took the storage bags, first gave a storage bag to each of them, then gave 100 upper-grade spirit stones to each of them. He smiled and said, you have worked hard, don't think it is too little. Thank you, Senior. The 2 of them received it happily, not to mention that Yu Qianqiu personally gave it. The spirit stones are 10 times more than the others. When did the 2 of them get 100 upper-grade spirit stones? The flying swords and spirit stones on the ground were put into the storage bags. The 2 of them hung the storage bags on their waists. The happy expression on their faces can't be stopped. From today onwards, we are also people with bags. Senior, please give us pointers on Guiyuan sword technique. The 2 of them looked at each other, suddenly bowed at the same time. Hundreds of people also bowed together and said, Senior, please give us pointers. In this kind of atmosphere, Xianxia was also in high spirits. He found the feeling of being a teacher. After adjusting his mood, his face became solemn. He slowly paced and said, "There is no pointers. I also don't know how to give pointers, but you all remember my words. Although all the sects in the world have thousands of spells, although each has its own magical power, the myriad changes do not deviate from the original. The sea of spells is boundless, but there is a path in the spells. Hard work is the path. Only through suffering can one become superior. The lack of talent can be made up for by hard work. As long as you all remember these, sooner or later you will be able to walk a path of glory that belongs to you. You don't need to imitate others everywhere, only the things that you comprehend yourself truly belong to you. This is all I want to say. You may wish to think about it." Ferdinand, who was in the garden, was stunned. He didn't expect this little rascal to actually be able to say such a reason. A few experts of supporting Immortal Island who were secretly paying attention to this, also fell into deep thought after hearing this. They faintly felt that Xianxia's words were somewhat reasonable. It was worth pondering. In fact, Xianxia himself was just fooling around. He just casually changed the words that he heard in his previous life and felt that it was reasonable. He didn't care whether it was really useful. The key was to say it now. It was enough. However, he didn't know that his words had really caused two extraordinary figures to emerge from these disciples. Chapter 380. In the courtyard behind the Wanfen Garden's main hall, Zi stood in the courtyard and looked at a tightly shut door with a puzzled expression. Xianxia and Ferong had entered the room again. Ferong was the same as Wu Lixue and was also making some strange sounds. Zi could not understand it no matter how she thought about it. After half a day, Xianxia came out of the room happily. Zi walked over and asked, "What are you guys doing?" Xianxia didn't answer and instructed with a serious expression, "Now help me guard this room and don't let anyone in. I have something important to do." Zi saw that he was serious and immediately agreed. Xianxia then went back into the room. Ferong, who was tidying up her clothes, still had an amorous expression on her face. Xianxia hugged her and disappeared. Ferong wasn't surprised at all as she was used to it. Utopia's misty palace, Bai Suzhen was sitting cross-legged with the green destiny sword in her hand. She would draw something in the air with her slender fingers. Then she would shake her head and go into deep thought. It was obvious that she hadn't broken the restriction on the sword. Xianxia, who suddenly appeared, looked at her silently and didn't disturb her. His eyes revealed a pitiful expression. Such a beautiful woman had been doing such boring things. He didn't know how long she hadn't gone out. It was all for him. Bai Suzhen suddenly looked up and was startled. She put down the sword and smiled gently. "You are here. It's just a broken sword. It's fine if I can't break the restriction on it. At most, I will just use it as a high-grade artifact. You don't have to make things difficult for yourself." Xianxia looked at her and smiled. "I have some ideas." After Bai Suzhen indirectly rejected him, she sized him up. Seeing that he was quite energetic, she calmed down and asked calmly, "What's the matter?" "I can concoct the 7 orifices exquisite pill now." Xianxia smiled. Bai Suzhen was surprised and asked, "You found the resurrection grass?" "I haven't picked it yet, but I can pick it any time. Sister, help me prepare 3 mature 7-star blood orchids and 3 strands of Adumbra flower silk. I'll go pick the soul-returning grass now and meet up with you here." "Got it?" Bai Suzhen nodded with a gentle smile and went out. Xianxia stared blankly at her back for a while before disappearing. Outside the great door of the netherworld, Xianxia, who had suddenly appeared, subconsciously looked around. Although it was not his first time here, the atmosphere here was really suffocating. He glanced at the tightly shut gates of the netherworld. The heaven-swallowing beast that was missing a knocker and 2 of its teeth was still the same. The skulls on the netherworld wall were still staring at him with boundless terror. Now was not the time to enjoy the scenery. Xianxia walked to the side of the netherworld steel that was guarding it. He raised his hand and released 3 pillars of water, directly sealing the 3 resurrection grass in ice. Then he pulled out the ice pillars along with the resurrection grass and disappeared with the ice pillars. Bai Suzhen had already returned to the room to wait for him. Seeing him appear with 3 ice pillars, she asked in surprise, This thing is not something of the mortal world. When I picked it, I couldn't see it in public, or else it would immediately turn into smoke. I directly sealed it in ice and brought it here." Hearing his words, Bai Suzhen discovered that there were indeed 3 stalks of red spiritual herbs in the icicle, which were similar in color to the 7-star snow orchid. Carefully looking at them, she asked, "You can enter and exit the 9 netherworld cave at any time now?" "That's right. Now I can enter and exit the 9th netherworld cave at any time. Yu Qianzhou smiled proudly. Then his expression turned solemn as he said, Sis, let's not waste any more time. I still have to rush back. Let's start now. He raised the 3 icicles with his palm, and the cyan flame that had become faintly transparent due to the lowered temperature instantly wrapped around the icicles. The 3 icicles instantly turned into mist and evaporated, while the 3 spirit herbs also turned into sparkling red spiritual liquid. Yu Qianzhou looked at the changes in his palm. His gaze deepened as he said, Adumbra guarding the soul, soul replenishing the soul, and 7-star body building. There are 3 portions of each. Although this 7 orifices exquisite pill only requires these 3 spirit herbs to refine, each of them is a precious treasure and is truly hard to come by. Sis, toss in the other 2. Bai Suzhen obeyed and tossed the Adumbra flower and 7-star blood orchid into the azure flames. Yu Qianzhou immediately acted as if he was facing a great enemy. He carefully controlled the flames with a cold expression. After all, these were not ordinary spirit pills. It would be a pity if they were wasted. Bai Suzhen shifted her gaze from the azure flames to Yu Qianzhou's face. His exceptionally serious expression made Bai Suzhen feel a little dazed. He was no longer that useless disciple Ong Guangceng from back then. The massive wealth and manpower that Utopia possessed were all built by him step by step. Once these powers matured and officially appeared in the cultivation world, it would definitely shock the world. Just how far could he go on this path? After an unknown period of time, a red light suddenly appeared in the room, pulling Bai Suzhen back from her daze. She saw Yu Qianzhou's palm emitting a red light that resembled blood patterns. The red light rippled gently in the room. With a smile on his face, Yu Qianzhou picked up a pill to take a look. He couldn't see the shape of the pill in his fingers. All he could see was a blood-red shadow. It was clearly a demonic color, but it didn't feel demonic. The pure red patterns were soft. You've succeeded? Bai Suzhen said in surprise. Yu Qianzhou smiled and said, 9 pills in 1 cauldron. Not a single one is missing. It's done. At that moment, everyone in Utopia cast their gazes above Ethereal Peak. They saw the entire ethereal palace suddenly emit a blood-red glow that soared into the sky. After the wind and clouds in the sky were stimulated by the red light, they stirred silently. Gradually, the wind and clouds formed the shape of a dragon and a tiger. They circled and chased each other. It was a spectacular sight. After a full 15 minutes, the blood-red light converged. Only then did the dragon and tiger gradually dissipate, leaving everyone dumbfounded. The 2 people in the room were still looking at the spirit pills. They didn't know that when the pills were formed, an auspicious sign had already appeared in the sky outside. This was a sign that would only appear when a truly heaven-defying spirit pill had been refined. The 7 orifices exquisite pill could compete with the heavens and earth, so it was naturally a heaven-defying spirit pill. Sis, I'll take 1 and leave first. Give the remaining 2 to my parents. Keep the rest safe. I'll get them from you when I need them. Yu Qianzhou gave 8 spirit pills to Bai Suzhen and put 1 into his storage bag. He smiled and left. By the time he returned to Myriad Fragrance Garden, it was already the next morning. Furong had been waiting for him in the room. When she saw him, she called out happily, Yu Qianzhou. No matter how close the 2 of them were, Furong liked to call him that, and every time she called him that, she would be very happy. I'm going to the mulberry garden to find Aunt Jiao. After I see her, I might leave immediately. Yu Qianzhou hugged her and whispered into her ear. Furong hurriedly said, I'll go with you. Be good. Yu Qianzhou directly said these 2 words. Furong understood what he meant and didn't say much. She only said quietly, then you have to come and see me often. As time goes by, I'll miss you very much. Yu Qianzhou pushed her away and smiled in return. He resolutely turned around and opened the door. When he opened the door, he saw that Ziyi was still standing at the door looking back at him. Yu Qianzhou unsheathed the long sword on his back and soared into the sky. Ziyi immediately followed. Furong ran out of the room and blankly stared at the 2 figures flying away. In the mulberry garden they faced each other again. Yu Qianzhou stepped forward and bowed to Ma Jiao, asking, Aunt Jiao, have you made up your mind? Ma Jiao gently pushed away Lan Bingxue, who was supporting her, and walked to Yu Qianzhou with the help of her walking stick. She looked at him and asked, Yu Qianzhou, this old woman will entrust you with a task that is within your ability. However, this task may take a long time. Can you promise me? Yu Qianzhou was slightly stunned. From what she said, it seemed that she didn't want to live for another 150 years. Could it be that there was something that she could do in exchange for prolonging her life? He couldn't help but ask, "Aunt Jiu, do you have something else you want me to do?" Ma Jiu shook her head and said, "Answer me first. If it is within your ability, can you guarantee that no matter how much energy and time you spend, you can fulfill your promise to this old woman?" "This junior will naturally do it if it's within my ability," replied Xianxia respectfully. "Good." Ma Jiu's old eyes suddenly lit up and she slowly said, "I want you to promise me that no matter what happens in the future, this old woman will entrust the safety of xianxia and her daughter to you. You must do your best to protect them and not let anyone harm them unless you, Xianxia, are no longer in this world. Can you do it?" This. Xianxia didn't expect such a request. He frowned and said, "Forgive this junior for speaking bluntly, but this junior will think of a way to prolong Senior's life by 150 years. With Senior on supporting Immortal Island, won't you be able to protect them better than this junior?" He just wanted to solve this problem once and for all and didn't want to create another burden. What he didn't know was that Ma Jiu wanted this promise from him was because she found out that xianxia had fallen in love with him. Ma Jiu was prepared to use this promise at a critical time to fulfill their marriage. But now, the situation in the cultivation world didn't look good and Ma Jiu faintly felt that something big was about to happen. The women of the Guan clan have suffered too much, and the women who married out of the Guan clan suffered even more. None of them had a good ending, and this seems to have become the fate of the Guan clan's women. That's why I've never married. Back then, I was the one who supported the marriage between Yan Bugui and Bai Hua. My goal was to prevent the men from the Guan family from arranging her fate, so that she could escape the fate of dying a horrible death. But I was wrong. Yan Bugui has disappointed me too much. Since this old woman made a mistake, this old woman has to bear the consequences. But no one knows what will happen in the future, and I'm afraid that this old woman won't be able to protect them. Xianxia, this old woman believes that you can prolong this old woman's life by 150 years. But this old woman has lived long enough, so I'm willing to exchange my 150 years with you. Help me protect them and don't let anyone bully them." Ma Jiu slowly said. "So that's how it is." Xianxia hesitated. To be honest, it wasn't a good thing to accept this task. It was definitely a troublesome matter. But the debt of the past must be repaid. He just didn't expect the interest to be so heavy. Xianxia took a deep breath and nodded with a sigh. This junior will agree to Senior's request. Chapter 381. Ma Jiu had always been nice to him. Seeing her so lonely, he almost gave her the 7 orifices exquisite pellet for free. But on second thought he had to pay the price for what he did, so Ma Jiu should do the same. The most important thing was not to let too many people know that he had such a pellet. Otherwise there would be big trouble. "Thank you then." Ma Jiu nodded with a gratified expression. "This is what I owe you, so I should return it." But Xianxia looked at Lan Bingxue and begged, "Jiu, please help me keep my master's secret." Ma Jiu paused for a moment. This matter could be said to be of great importance. She was already prepared to tell Feng Xiangtian and the others about this after Xianxia left. She wanted them to pay attention to avoid unnecessary trouble. But she had just made a difficult request. It was a bit unreasonable for Lan Bingxue not to agree to such a small request. Ma Jiu also looked at Lan Bingxue and said to Xianxia, "Don't worry. I won't tell anyone about your master." "Thank you, Senior. I'll visit you again when I have the chance. I'm leaving now." Xianxia bowed. "Are you leaving Fushin Island now?" Ma Jiu asked. "Yes. I've promised 10,000 demons and Moon Sect. I'll go there." Xianxia replied. "Moon Sect? Xuanhuan." Ma Jiu was also surprised. Why would Moon Sect invite a man? She didn't say anything and pointed her demon slayer wand at the sky. A white light shot out. Xianxia knew that she was opening the island's great formation for him, so he bowed and said, "Thank you, Senior." The sword on his back shot out and carried him into the sky. A purple shadow chased after him. The 2 people in the mulberry garden watched as the 2 of them disappeared into the sky. Ma Jiu suddenly sighed and said, "The sky is high, the birds fly, the sea is wide, the fish leap." I heard that Xianxia said such words when he was expelled from the sect. Now it seems that the young man's words were true. Bingxue, can you think of that? Back then he was just a refinement stage disciple, but in just a dozen years he has already become famous in the cultivation world. He has become a VIP that all the major sects are scrambling to invite. His achievements are extraordinary. No matter how high his achievements are, he still has to be polite to you. Lan Bingxue smiled. Ma Jiugu shook her head, turned around and murmured in the direction of Penglai Pavilion. Feng Xiangtian, who was in the middle of the discussion, suddenly quieted down and listened attentively. Then he frowned and remained silent. Ma Jiugu told him that it was impossible for Yu Qianqiu to join supporting Immortal Island again. In the future, supporting Immortal Island should try not to provoke Yu Qianqiu. Supporting Immortal Island couldn't afford to offend the person behind him. A man and a woman were flying across the sea towards the mainland. Zi suddenly asked, Yu Qianqiu, you promised her to protect the mother and daughter. What about the task Senior Bai gave us? With the #1 sect in the world, the supporting Immortal Island, around, no one would dare to provoke the 100 Flowers Palace. We don't need to guard it every day. I will ask the 4 families to keep an eye on it. If anything happens we can talk about it. Then Yu Qianqiu turned his head and smiled. Zi, when you go to the Moon Clan this time, remember to get the money they promised first. Otherwise it will be bad if they go back on their word. I know. When I see them I will ask them to pay first. If they dare to go back on their word, humph. Help me see if there is anything valuable in the Moon Clan that can pay off the debt. I will move it back to the Wu family and ask them to sell it for money, Zi said without hesitation. It seemed that after staying with Wu Lixue for a few days, she had learned a lot about the Wu family. She was a fast learner. I see. Yu Qianqiu looked at her in surprise and nodded. He didn't expect that she would move things to pay off the debt. Yu Qianqiu was very happy for her improvement. Moon Clan. Yu Qianqiu didn't know where he was at first. Thinking of the disciples of the Moon Clan from the Ethereal Palace, he asked Chu Ping-er and found out where he was. In the Xuanhuan mountain range, there were dense vegetation and ferocious beasts. There were few people there. There was a mountain that was high and steep, towering into the sky. Looking from afar, if one was on the mountain he would be able to reach for the stars. The Moon Clan was at the top of the mountain. Yu Qianqiu and Zi flew here late at night. After seeing the mountain they finally understood why it was called the Moon Clan. The mountain was so high that a bright moon seemed to be above their heads. They could see it when they looked up. Looking at the entire Moon Clan from the top of the mountain, there were all kinds of buildings covering the entire mountain. Under the bright moonlight, as soon as the two approached, they heard Hua Rui's voice from the top of the mountain. Are you Qianqiu and Zi here? She had obviously been waiting for a long time. Senior Hua, it is indeed the two of us. After Yu Qianqiu replied, the two of them descended. Hua Rui walked over and nodded with a smile. I thought you were going to stay on Fuxian Island for a few more days. It's good that you're here. Please follow me to see the clan leader. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Everyone in the cultivation world knew that Xianghua Fairy wouldn't come out to meet people easily. Now that the two of them had just arrived, they were being led to see her. This was really a big deal. However, it seemed that the main target was Zi. Did the Moon Clan already know Zi Yi's master's identity? The moonlight was like water and the Moon Clan was high up in the sky. It looked a bit like the Moon Palace. With a stomach full of questions, Yu Qianqiu followed Hua Rui with Zi. They didn't go to the quiet and huge main hall of the Moon Clan. Instead, they went to a pavilion in the distance under the moonlight. From afar, they could vaguely see a woman standing in the pavilion. When they got closer, they couldn't see the woman because the angle was different. There was a board hanging on the pavilion. On it were 3 beautiful words, Silver Moon Pavilion. Obviously, it was also written by a woman. Hua Rui led the two of them up the pavilion, and they immediately saw a woman leaning against the railing. Her white robes were like frost, and her hair was coiled up into a bun. She was immersed in the mercury-like moonlight, graceful and lonely, and her back seemed rather desolate. Yu Qianqiu muttered to himself. Is this the famous Xianghua Fairy of the Moon Clan? It was said that the Moon Clan was different from other clans. Every generation, the top cultivator of the clan would be the Moon Clan's leader. Is this woman the top cultivator of the Moon Clan? Leader Yu Qianqiu and Zi are here, Hua Rui said. Without a doubt, it was the leader of the Moon Clan. Yu Qianqiu hurriedly bowed and said, Yu Qianqiu greets you, senior. Zi still stood there without moving. She didn't care about the leader or leader. The woman nodded. After hesitating for a long time, she slowly turned around. She didn't say anything and stared at Zi in a daze. With this look, it was hard for her to move her eyes away. Yu Qianqiu looked up. After seeing the woman's face, his eyes brightened. He couldn't stop clicking his tongue. It was said that the beauty of the Moon Clan's Xianghua Fairy was unparalleled in the world. This was not an exaggeration. She was even comparable to Bai Suzhen. But why did it feel like he had seen her somewhere before? No one spoke in the attic. Yu Qianqiu was also thinking hard. He just couldn't remember where he had seen her before. Anyway, she looked very familiar. Seeing that she kept staring at Ziyi, Yu Qianzhou subconsciously glanced at Ziyi. Then his eyes widened and his head swung back and forth between Ziyi and the Xianghua fairy. Damn. No wonder she looked so familiar. If it wasn't for the fact that she looked like Nongzhu, she would be a replica of the Xianghua fairy. Especially her mouth and nose. They were obviously made from the same mold. Yu Qianzhou's eyes were rolling around. Ziyi also felt that she had seen the Xianghua fairy somewhere before, but she couldn't remember. Thus, the silence in the attic was broken by her. Ziyi asked, "You are the leader of the Moon Clan?" "Yes." The Xianghua fairy nodded excitedly. As soon as she spoke, Yu Qianzhou sighed inwardly. It was one thing for her to be so beautiful, but even her voice was so pleasant to the ears. No wonder she did not meet people easily. Just think about it, how could a normal man have such a calm disposition? Ziyi pointed at Huarui and said, "She said that as long as I come, she will give me 20 million top-grade spiritual stones. Give me the money first." She still maintained her straightforward style of speaking. Hearing this, Yu Qianzhou just stood aside obediently and didn't look anywhere. It was as if he was telling others that what she said had nothing to do with him. "Are you usually short of money?" The Xianghua fairy's pleasant voice was heard. Her eyes were filled with concern. "I've always been short of money." Ziyi stretched out her hand and said, "Give me the money you promised first." "You've always been short of money?" Xianghua's voice was a little out of control. She looked at Ziyi up and down and bit her lip. Then she said in an agitated tone, "Where is your master? Has your master never given you any spiritual stones?" "No." Ziyi shook her head and said, "Give me the money first. If you go back on your words, who will I ask for the money from? We can talk about it after you give me the money." Hearing this, the Xianghua fairy's face instantly turned pale. She looked at Ziyi with extreme pity. Endless sadness and annoyance flowed in her eyes, as if she had done something wrong to Ziyi. She said in a trembling voice, "Rui, give her 20 million. No, give her 50 million. 50 million? Yu Qianzhou and Ziyi were stunned at the same time. Huarui sighed and shook her head. She took out a storage bag from her storage bag and gave it to Ziyi. Ziyi took it and couldn't wait to use her spiritual consciousness to check it. After that, she stared at the Xianghua fairy and said, "You gave me more than you wanted. I didn't force you. Don't go back on your words." I won't. Just take it. If you don't have enough, come to the Moon Clan to find me." When the Xianghua fairy said this, her voice was a little choked. Yu Qianzhou secretly glanced at her and found that there were tears in her eyes. This confirmed his suspicion. There must be something going on. There must be something going on. Ziyi also seemed to realize that she had taken too much money. She said a little embarrassedly, "Since you gave me so much money, you can ask whatever you want. I'll tell you everything I can, but I definitely won't tell you what I can't say." The Xianghua fairy nodded repeatedly. She turned around and wiped away the tears in her eyes. Then she turned back and asked, "I heard that your master is called Mr. Nongzhu. What's her real name? Is it Xiaoyao?" Chapter 382. Ziyi held the storage bag and shook her head. "My master's name is Nongzhu, not Xiaoyao. Is there anyone called Xiaoyao among your master's friends? Or have you ever heard of a person called Xiaoyao from your master?" Jade Flower Fairy asked. "No." Ziyi thought for a while and said, "When and where did your master accept you as a disciple?" Jade Flower Fairy asked again. "I don't know." Ziyi shook her head and said, "I've been with my master for as long as I can remember. He didn't tell me when and where he accepted me." "Where does your master live? Can you take me to have a look?" "I can't tell you that, nor can I take you there. Not everyone can go there." Ziyi refused. Hearing this, Jade Flower Fairy was disappointed and became silent. Yu Qianzhou didn't say a word. His eyes sneaked glances at this and then at that. There was a scene in his mind. The old handsome guy changed his name to Xiao Yao. Back then, when he was playing around outside, he picked up a beautiful woman and got her pregnant. After the beautiful woman gave birth to a child, she suddenly realized that the child and the man were gone. She searched for them for a long time but still couldn't find them. In fact, the old handsome man secretly took the child away. In order to avoid trouble, the old handsome man told the child that he was her master. When the child grew up, she also thought that he was her master. In fact, they were father and daughter. Interesting. Only a handsome man like Nongzhu could get such a beautiful woman so easily. Only a beautiful woman like Xianghua could attract a handsome man like Nongzhu easily. It seemed that Nongzhu was too much of a playboy. She gave birth to a child for him, but he ran away. It was too wicked. Xianxia smiled. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was true. Is there a red crescent birthmark on the inside of your left arm? Jade Flower Fairy suddenly asked. Ziyi subconsciously looked at her arm and asked curiously, how did you know I have a birthmark on my arm? Xuanhuan Fairy became excited and took a step forward. However, Huarui stopped her and shook her head slightly. She pointed at Xianxia and said, Master, this is Xianxia. Here. Listening to their conversation, Xianxia is 100% sure that Ziyi is the daughter of Jasper Flower Fairy. He is secretly happy, thinking that he has something on Nongzhu. Ziyi suddenly shoves the storage bag into his hand. Xianxia was stunned. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, he sheepishly stuffed the storage bag into his own storage bag. The Jade Flower Fairy immediately asked, Ziyi, why did you give him the money? Before Ziyi can speak, Xianxia hurriedly said, I keep it for her. She can use it whenever she wants. Although Ziyi didn't understand why he said that, she believed that there must be a reason, so she nodded. Xuanhuan Fairy, who has been in a superior position for a long time, is naturally not easy to fool. The sadness on her face turned into indifference in an instant. She stared at Xianxia and asked, Are you Xianxia who betrayed the sect twice? Why is Ziyi with you? As a supreme master, she naturally hates people like this the most. And Xianxia also hates it when people talk about him like this. But for the sake of such a beautiful woman and Ziyi's mother, he didn't care about it. He thought for a while and sighed, Ziyi, you heard it. Why don't you go back? I don't have a good reputation. If you follow me, you will be implicated sooner or later. You go back first and I will explain to your master later. I won't go back. Hearing that, Ziyi immediately glared at him. She hasn't finished the task that Senior Bai asked her to do. How can she go back now? She stared at the Jade Flower Fairy and said, Although you gave me more money, you did it voluntarily. It's none of your business who I'm with. The Jade Flower Fairy's beautiful face suddenly froze. She looked at Ziyi, who wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. She could scold anyone except Ziyi. Finally, she stared at Xianxia and asked, Do you know Ziyi's master? Xianxia said with a wry smile, I don't just know her. Ziyi's master asked me to bring her out. I don't want to. But her master's cultivation is too high. I can't do anything about it. Anyone who heard that they were not welcome would be unhappy, and Ziyi was no exception. Her pretty face was almost frozen. She stared at Xianxia coldly. Xianxia shrank his head. It seemed that he was completely afraid of this woman. It seemed that only now did he look like he was taking care of her money. The Jade Flower Fairy and Huarui were both stunned. They didn't expect that the audacious Xianxia would be so afraid of Ziyi, and they didn't expect that Ziyi would be so tough. The Jade Flower Fairy looked at Xianxia in a more relaxed way. She asked, Do you know where Ziyi's master lives? Yes. We came out from her master's place this time. Before Xianxia finished his words, Ziyi shouted, Xianxia, if you dare to tell others where my master and I live, don't blame me for being rude to you. I won't tell you. Xianxia smiled awkwardly. Ziyi turned her head and warned the Jade Flower Fairy, I don't care what kind of master you are, but there are some things you'd better not know. The Jade Flower Fairy was stunned again. She looked at Xianxia again and felt that he had been wronged. She even thought of a possibility. In this saber drawing competition, people said that Xianxia wanted to collect money. However, she had never heard that Xianxia was a greedy person. This time he even took out such a treasure. Could it be that he was forced by Ziyi? If that was the case, then Xianxia had indeed been wronged. Xianxia said to her with a bitter smile, We've been here. If there's nothing else, we'll leave now. They had come here to get the money. Now, not only did they get the money, but they also had an extra 30 million yuan. Moreover, they knew a secret. Why not leave? Wait. The Jade Flower Fairy's voice was much gentler. Looking at the two of them, she frowned slightly and said, It's too dangerous for you two to walk around the cultivation world alone. Why don't you join the Cultivation World Alliance? At least most cultivators won't do anything to you under the current circumstances. Will the Cultivation Alliance accept us? Xianxia asked. He kinda wanted to join. Even if he didn't put in any effort, at least they could share information. That way, it would be more convenient for him to do many things. The Jade Flower Fairy's eyes paused on the two of them. The Cultivation Alliance might not accept them. One had a bad reputation and violated the taboo of the cultivation world, and the other had an unknown background. After thinking for a while, she made up her mind and said, I'll be your guarantor. The Cultivation Alliance should accept you. Why don't you stay here for the time being? I'll let you know when it's done. The Moon Clan wanted a man to stay overnight? Xianxia was stunned. He hesitated and decided not to be the first. He shook his head and said, "Thank you for your help, senior. We still have to go to the 10,000 demons. We'll leave now." As soon as he finished speaking, Purple Dress flew away with a whoosh. Obviously, Purple Dress didn't have a good impression of the Moon Clan leader. Xianxia smiled helplessly at the Jade Flower Fairy. His long sword popped out and he chased after Purple Dress quickly. The Jade Flower Fairy hurried to the railing and looked longingly at the two figures disappearing into the depths of the stars. Huarui walked over and said softly, "Sister, are you sure it's her? Who else could it be? Her eyes are so similar to that heartless man. And the crescent-shaped birthmark on her hand." The Jade Flower Fairy's eyes were already misty with tears. "When I first saw her I thought she looked like you. That feeling was very strong. I didn't expect it to be her." Huarui sighed. Suddenly she turned around and asked, "Sister, do you suspect that her master is brother-in-law?" The Jade Flower Fairy shook her head and said in confusion, "I'm not sure. Back then Xiaoyao was an ordinary man who wandered around. I was fascinated by him and was attracted by him. After so many years, I always thought that the father and daughter had already passed away. Now that I see Zi, I suddenly realize that the name Xiaoyao is not like the name of an ordinary person. How can an ordinary person be as free and unfettered as he is? Mr. Nongzhu. Didn't Xiaoyao always play with a purple-black bamboo flute in his hand? When I first saw brother-in-law, I knew he was not an ordinary man. But I couldn't tell that he was also a cultivator. I didn't expect." Huarui smiled bitterly and said, "I didn't expect him to be a hidden master. Sister, you didn't see what happened. The 7 cultivators in the last phase of the nature's test were all scared when they heard his name. You can imagine how powerful brother-in-law's cultivation is. It's funny that we didn't see it at all after spending so much time with him. He hid it from me so well." The Jade Flower Fairy was about to cry. "Sister, why did brother-in-law secretly take Purple Dress away? Didn't he have a reason? I don't think brother-in-law is an unreasonable person." Huarui asked in confusion. "After Purple Dress was born, I saw that she had the spiritual root of cultivation, so I told Xiaoyao about my identity as a cultivator. Xiaoyao didn't seem to care at all. I should have noticed it at that time. How could a mortal be so indifferent after knowing our existence?" The Jade Flower Fairy smiled bitterly and said, "Then I told him that mortals have a short lifespan. I wanted to bring Purple Dress back to the Moon Clan to cultivate. Who knew that he would strongly oppose it? We even had a fight about it. The next day he disappeared with his daughter." Huarui was silent for a while and said, "In that case, the reason makes sense. Brother-in-law is a hidden master, so he might not be interested in a sect like the Moon Clan. Brother-in-law might want to teach Purple Dress personally. Otherwise, how could she have reached the last phase of the nature's test at her age? At least with our Moon Clan's ability, we can't do that. In that case, why did he hide it from me? If he let me know his identity, I would have let Purple Dress go with him. Then we wouldn't have lost contact for so many years." The Jade Flower Fairy smiled miserably and said, "I think he's just like his name. He's used to being free and unfettered. After being with me for a long time, he thinks I'm annoying. What master? Could it be a master in the soul formation stage? It's not impossible. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to scare the 7 cultivators in the last phase of the nature's test." Huarui reminded, "Sister, do you remember the mysterious master who appeared during the trial in the demon realm? The few masters and elders of the Fuxian Island were all injured. Didn't you say that the mysterious master could be a soul formation cultivator? If there really is a soul formation cultivator in this world, why can't brother-in-law be one?" The mysterious Mr. Nongzhu. The Jade Flower Fairy smiled miserably and said, "Xiaoyao is a soul formation cultivator. Is it really possible? Why did he hide it from me?" Chapter 383. The night sky was bright, and the man and woman flying in the sky were the first to bear the sunlight. Xianxia looked at Zi from time to time with a weird smile on his face. This girl's mother was really generous. She was much more generous than Nongzhu. Nongzhu. Xiaoyao? He always walking among flowers without leaving his real name, tut. This old handsome man was really a master of picking flowers. If you dare to touch me again, I will bring Jasper Flower Fairy to your purple bamboo forest in the South Sea one day and see what will happen. Yu Qianqiu smiled even more happily when he thought about how he would be able to teach that shrewd Nongzhu a lesson. He actually faintly looked forward to this day. In the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea, Nongzhu of the Langshen courtyard was kneeling beside the tea table in the room. Suddenly she felt her nose itch. She touched her nose and asked curiously, "Is someone plotting against me? Why do I feel like sneezing?" She shook her head and placed 2 cups made of purple bamboo. She lifted the teapot that was boiling on the stove and filled the 2 cups with fragrant tea. She put the teapot aside and pushed a cup of tea to Bai Changchun with 2 slender fingers. Nongzhu looked at Bai Changchun, who was sitting cross-legged, and said angrily, "Why did you come to me again?" Bai Changchun, who had always been serious, smiled lightly and said, "When I heard that the purple bamboos here are blooming, I missed the time when we first met. You treated me with this purple bamboo-scented tea. It still lingers on my tongue and I can't stop thinking about it. It's really a rare fragrant tea. After so many years, how can I not come when the purple bamboos are blooming again?" From the tone of their conversation, it could be heard that they had a close relationship. No one had ever seen Bai Changchun talk to someone in this tone. "Old Bai, now that you mention it, I remember that when you came here for the first time, the purple bamboos were blooming the next day. After the flowers withered, a large number of purple bamboos died. Some time ago, after Yu Qianqiu came, the purple bamboo forest blossomed again the next day. Are you too the nemesis of my purple bamboo forest? If not, it's too much of a coincidence." Nongzhu said doubtfully. "Dead again?" Bai Changchun was startled as he held the teacup in his hand. Nongzhu shook her head painfully and said, "Once a bamboo blooms, it's a sign of withering. Hundreds of purple bamboos. It's gone again. 100 or so bamboos to the purple bamboo forest is just a drop in the bucket." Bai Changchun said indifferently, and began to slowly taste the fragrant tea. Nongzhu was so angry that she raised her eyebrows and glared at him. She shouted, "I won't let you drink this tea." Bai Changchun stretched out his hand and snatched the teacup from the other party's hand. Not minding it, he said indifferently, "I advise you not to disturb me while I'm drinking tea. Otherwise, I guarantee that you won't see a single bamboo in this southern sea purple bamboo forest ever again." This was a blatant threat. Rongzhu stood up abruptly and scolded, "Bai Changchun, you're using the fact that your cultivation is higher than mine to threaten me." Bai Changchun suddenly sighed and said, "When I first met you, I drank purple bamboo flower tea once. This is the second time. The day the East Holy Land opens is not far away. I wonder if I will have a third chance in this lifetime." Nongzhu was startled. She looked at the teacup in her hand and said with a twitching expression, "You're using the soft approach when the hard approach doesn't work." Although she saw through his intention, she still sat down and put the teacup in front of Bai Changchun. She asked, "Do you really think that Yu Qianqiu can solve the current situation? You'll know after you try." Bai Changchun picked up the teacup and drank. "Try? This is such a big thing and you're just randomly sending a disciple to try?" Nongzhu immediately jumped up and pointed at him, scolding, "Bai Changchun, it turns out that what you said about stargazing at night is fake. If you want to try, let your apprentice have a try. Why do you have to involve my daughter? What are you planning?" "No, I have to call Ziyi back." "What's the hurry?" Bai Changchun said indifferently, "Ziyi should go out and take a walk. Look at her, she has been with you for so many years. Other than her cultivation improving, what do you think she has learned from you? She knows nothing. Maybe she can learn a lot from Yu Qianqiu. At least there's no danger." Nongzhu said loudly, "I can let her live a carefree life, a life that everyone dreams of. This is not Ziyi's dream. This is your dream. What's the difference between a pig and a life without joy, anger, sorrow, and joy?" Bai Changchun looked at Nongzhu and sneered, "Don't use your selfishness as an excuse to protect your daughter. You just don't want your daughter to leave you. An eagle will spread its wings one day. If you follow an eagle, you will starve to death sooner or later. A cultivator at the final stage of the nature's test doesn't know what the world is like. You're really a good father." "I'm selfish." Nongzhu's face changed. After a moment of silence, she shook her head and said, "No, it's too dangerous to follow Yu Qianqiu. You don't know your disciple's character. He is born to cause trouble. He is called the scum of the cultivation world. I don't expect Ziyi to learn anything from him. Ziyi is not a little girl anymore. It's too late for you to teach her something now. Let her follow Yu Qianqiu. Maybe the way of educating the scum of the cultivation world is more appropriate than that of a father like you." Bai Changchun took a sip of tea, stared at Nongzhu and shook his head. "Don't worry. Let Ziyi face it bravely. You often travel in the secular world. You should know that more hardships are not entirely a bad thing. At least I believe that Xianxia will have a way to protect your daughter when she is really in danger. Old man Bai, be honest. Am I really as bad as you said? Nongzhu asked with a pale face. You're too good. You heard Zi. Bai Changchun suddenly sighed. When I left the Bai family, I was worried about what would happen to my family without my protection. Later, although there were many hardships, I didn't intervene. As a result, they got to where they are now step by step better than I imagined. Nongzhu, do you really want to take care of Zi for the rest of her life? Nongzhu didn't say anything. He turned around and walked out slowly, feeling lonely. Bai Changchun watched his figure disappear into the depths of the bamboo forest. He picked up his tea and continued to drink as if nothing had happened. On the beach, a melodious flute sounded. Nongzhu held the flute horizontally to his mouth. Facing the sea breeze, his 10 slender fingers moved up and down. The music he played was as lonely as his mood, with a touch of sadness. The waves gently surged in front of his feet. Before long, a flock of seagulls fluttered their wings and landed around him as if they were also listening. At this moment, a dozen water columns suddenly sprayed out of the sea. Then, a dozen huge fishtails swung out of the sea, making waves, and disappeared. Wah wah. A dozen humpback whales jumped out of the sea, turned around and smashed into the sea. The waves danced and a dozen of their backs came out of the sea. They swam toward Nongzhu together as if they had heard the call of Nongzhu's flute. Nongzhu kept playing the flute and walked slowly to the sea. He stepped on the waves as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. After walking dozens of meters on the sea, the leading whale in front of him left the group, swam directly into the water and gently lifted Nongzhu up. Nongzhu stood on the back of a whale while playing the sad song. Accompanied by a group of whales, he kept walking toward the deep sea. The sound of the flute penetrated the sea and spread around. 3 old men were flying fast in the sky. The leading one was the white-robed old man on the snow mountain. The other 2 must have high cultivation to be able to keep up with his flying speed. After a while, the island where the South Sea purple bamboo forest was located was in the sight of the 3. When they were approaching and about to land, they suddenly heard the melodious flute coming from the distant sea. They looked at each other and the white-robed old man said, "It's Nongzhu's flute. Nongzhu is not on the island. Let's go." The 3 quickly flew over the purple bamboo forest. Bai Changchun, who was in the house below, paused for a moment with a teacup in his hand. The sky was blue and the sea was wide. Riding a whale in the sea, Nongzhu seemed to have figured something out. The sound of the flute gradually became clearer. The accompanying humpback whales also became cheerful and jumped out of the sea from time to time. Suddenly, 3 sharp whistles came from the sky, followed by 3 huge chi forces falling from the sky. More than a dozen whales became a little restless. Nongzhu stopped playing the flute and saw the 3 elders slowly descending from the sky. They floated about 3 or 4 meters above the sea surface and surrounded him in the middle. "Nongzhu, you're really living a leisurely life." The white-robed old man snorted. Nongzhu held the flute in her hand and gently tapped it in her palm. She said in surprise, "Bing Qingzi." She then looked at the gray-robed old man on the left and the black-robed old man on the right. She frowned and said, "Hu Changshou Yin Baikang, the 3 of you are experts at the late transforming realm. Are you looking for me?" The white-robed Bing Qingzi shouted, "Nongzhu, don't play dumb. You once said that you wouldn't interfere in the affairs of the cultivation world. Why did you break your promise?" Nongzhu frowned and gently waved the flute in her hand. The whales all sank to the bottom of the sea. He stepped on the waves and sneered, "When did I break my promise to interfere in the affairs of the cultivation world? Bing Qingzi, don't think that you can talk nonsense just because your cultivation is high. Do you think I'm afraid of you?" He looked at the other 2 and said, "Are the 2 of you here to cause trouble for me?" The black-robed Yin Baikang laughed and said, "Brother Nongzhu, don't misunderstand. Brother Changshou and I were invited here to testify." "Testify? What kind of testimony?" Nongzhu asked as she looked at the position of the 3. They were obviously afraid that she would run away, so they surrounded her. "Your disciple Zi was sent to the cultivation world of China by you. How dare you say that you didn't interfere?" Bing Qingzi shouted. Nongzhu snorted and said, "That's right. My disciple Zi did go to the cultivation world of China. So what? Does the cultivation world of China belong to your family and others can't go there?" "Don't be anxious." Yin Baikang pressed his hands against the 2 of them and said to Nongzhu with a smile, "Brother Nongzhu, it's like this. Your disciple Zi is now together with someone called Yu Qianchou. A few days ago one of Bing Qingzi's disciples died in the hands of Yu Qianchou. Bing Qingzi's other disciples did not take revenge because of your disciple Zi. We only want to know whether your disciple Zi has already been involved in the affairs of the cultivation world of China. Regardless of whether she has or not, we should take the opportunity to clarify things now. Brother Nongzhu, we advise you to bring Zi back to the South Ocean to prevent any misunderstandings. As for the past, we can let bygones be bygones for your sake. What do you think? Nongzhu was slightly stunned. That fellow Yu Qianqiu has already taken action? Could it be that you're ignoring my words? It seems that Bing Qingzi's disciples are all at the end of the tribulation transcendence. How could they be killed by him? This fellow is really a genius. Nongzhu looked at the three of them and pondered over this matter. Suddenly, she realized that Bai Changchun had appeared above their heads and was staring coldly down with his hands behind his back. Why did you guys come today? Why did you guys come today? What a coincidence. Nongzhu touched her forehead with her hand and shook her head with a bitter smile. It's fine if it's me, but these three experts at the end of the soul transformation realm didn't even notice that there's someone above them. The title of the world's #1 expert is really not just for show. Hu Changshou, who had been silent all this while, had an arrogant look on his face as he said aggressively, "What? Do the three of us have to pick an auspicious day to look for you? How would I dare?" Nongzhu waved her hand with a sarcastic expression. Pointing upwards, she shook her head and said, "Good luck to you guys." The three of them weren't afraid of him playing any tricks, so they raised their heads and looked up. But with just this glance, their expressions changed greatly, and they were almost scared out of their wits. Dressed in a light green robe, with a thin face and an icy gaze, he was staring at them indifferently, as if he was looking at a few ants. If it wasn't Bai Changchun, that killing god, who else could it be? The three of them immediately teleported dozens of meters away and stood in a row. The arrogance on Hu Changshou's face disappeared instantly. He pointed at Bai Changchun and asked, "Bai Changchun, what do you mean by standing above us?" The remaining meaning of his words was self-evident. "Do you want to sneak attack us?" Bai Changchun was indeed very conceited. He didn't even look at them. With his hands behind his back, he looked into the distant sky and said calmly, "What do you want?" The meaning of these words was clearly telling them, "Whatever meaning you want, I'll give it to you." Hu Changshou smacked his lips and didn't dare to say anything. Bing Qingzi said in a low voice, "Bai Changchun, this is a private matter between us and Nongzhu. You don't need to intervene." "Did I say that I want to intervene?" Bai Changchun said indifferently. He withdrew his gaze from the sky and looked at Bing Qingzi. He asked again, "Do you really want me to intervene?" Bing Qingzi's face stiffened. He didn't know what to say after hearing Chu Yang's words. The key was that this guy was too strong. The three of them weren't his match at all. If they said anything that made him unhappy, he would definitely take action immediately. Once he took action, he had never seen anyone survive under his hands. Talking to such a person was very stressful. "It's a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. Let's not talk too much." Yin Baikong tried to persuade them. Finally, he smiled at Bai Changchun and said, "Old Bai, we have something to discuss with Nongzhu. Don't think too much. We don't mean anything else." "How do you know that I'm thinking too much?" Bai Changchun's gaze fell on him again. Yin Baikong's smiling face immediately squeezed together. He nodded repeatedly and said, "It's good that you're not thinking too much." Chapter 384. The conversation in front of her made Nongzhu slightly sigh in her heart. Just now, the three of them were using both carrot and stick to force her. But when they met Bai Changchun, even if Bai Changchun was aggressive, the three of them had to suppress their anger. This was the prestige of the world's #1 master. The three were experts at the late spirit-severing stage, rare top cultivators in the world. They had never been bullied like this before. If it was in the past, they wouldn't have to be so humble. But since the battle in the East Sea, where 16 unconvinced spirit-severing experts were killed by Bai Changchun, no one in the world dared to go against Bai Changchun's edge. They were in a stalemate. Nongzhu said to Bai Changchun, "Yu Qianqiu killed Bing Qingzi's disciple. This old guy is famous for protecting his disciples. Should we tell them that Yu Qianqiu is your disciple?" "There's no need. Let this junior solve his own problems with his own ability. I can't help him for a lifetime. However, if someone who shouldn't have interfered, I won't let a single one of them get away." Bai Changchun expressed his stance through voice transmission. Nongzhu stared at Bai Changchun for a while. Her eyes flickered. No one knew what she was thinking. After a long time, he broke the stalemate and said, Bing Qingzi, my disciple Zi is going to the cultivation world of wuxia to gain experience. She has no right to interfere in your affairs. If she is really involved in your affairs coincidentally, then let me do it with my own ability. As long as you old guys don't interfere, I will also make my stance clear. I, Nongzhu, will not interfere with the junior's business. Bing Qingzi and the other two were startled. They didn't expect Nongzhu to say such words even with Bai Changchun's support. Wasn't this what they wanted to achieve? Yin Baikong immediately nodded and said, Brother Nongzhu is right. This is the junior's business. Us old guys can't interfere. Let the juniors fight with their own abilities. He looked at the other two and said, I, Yin Baikong, have the same stance as Brother Nongzhu. What do you two think? Bing Qingzi and Hu Changshuo's eyes flashed with joy. They had already sworn an oath. Now that Nongzhu had expressed her stance, they had nothing to worry about and could let their disciples do whatever they wanted. The two of them exchanged glances and nodded in unison. It settled then. Looking at Nongzhu, Bai Changchun was also a little surprised. He didn't expect that Nongzhu was really willing to let his daughter suffer. It seemed that Bai Changchun's previous persuasion had stimulated Nongzhu and ruined his previous plan. Now it was really up to you, Qianxia and the others. Since everything has been made clear, we shall not disturb you any further. Yin Baikong cupped his fists towards Bai Changchun and Nongzhu. The three of them did not want to stay any longer and shot into the sky. After watching them disappear, Nongzhu shook her head and said with a bitter smile, I've given my daughter to your disciple. I hope he won't let me down. Bai Changchun was speechless. If I knew you would agree, I wouldn't have come out. What an unnecessary move. It was not convenient for him to say this. If he did, he would be suspected of plotting against Nongzhu. Bai Changchun snorted coldly and disappeared with a swing of his sleeve. He returned to the Langshen courtyard in the blessed land of bamboo and continued drinking tea. 2 days later, Yu Qianxiu and Ziyi arrived at a stretch of deep mountains. On the main mountain range between the mountains, there were magnificent buildings that were connected layer by layer. This was the 10,000 demons, the number one demonic sect. Before the two of them got close, they heard Qiu Wuyuan's laughter coming from afar. Brother Yu, you're finally here. Obviously, they were discovered by the people of the 10,000 demons as soon as they arrived at this area. 5 gray figures came together and stopped in front of the two of them. The one leading them was Qiu Wuyuan. The two of them also stopped flying. Yu Qianxiu bowed and said, Greetings, senior. The other 4 had cold expressions. Yu Qianxiu had seen them before. They were the 4 generals of the demon clan who had been following Qiu Wuyuan for a long time. The 4 of them used to be the 4 servants of the previous sect leader. Not only were they high in cultivation, but they were also infamous. Because Qiu Wuyuan had been working outside for a long time, the previous sect leader sent the 4 of them to Qiu Wuyuan. It was probably more to protect his own disciple. I just received news from the Cultivation Alliance. They said that Xianghua Fairy of the Moon Clan has already vouched for the two of you. Now you are also members of the Cultivation Alliance. Qiu Wuyuan laughed. Yu Qianxiu and Ziyi looked at each other. They didn't expect Xianghua Fairy to be so efficient. Qiu Wuyuan raised his hand and said, Please. The few of them flew directly to the Grand Palace at the top of the mountain range. The entire palace had the aura of sky-bearing and was indeed magnificent. As soon as they landed in front of the palace, a group of people walked out of the palace. All of them looked serious and flew away, leaving only 3 old men standing in front of the palace. Qiu Wuyuan, who was originally happy, was slightly stunned. He quickly walked to a gloomy old man with white hair tied up by a black crown in the middle and asked, Palace Master, did something happen? So this was the famous Palace Master of the 10,000 demons, Bu Yunxiao. When Yu Qianxiu heard this, he sized him up carefully. Bu Yunxiao nodded with a serious expression and said, Wen, I just received news that eldest brother Yan Bugue brought a group of people to the 100 Flowers Valley. They are now in a confrontation with the Cultivation Alliance. Something might happen at any time. Go with the 4 generals of the demon clan. It's best if you can persuade eldest brother not to do anything for master's sake. I'll go see master now. Eldest brother, he sighed. Qiu Wuyuan stomped his feet and sighed. When he turned around and saw Yu Qianxiu and Zi, he realized that he almost forgot about them. He immediately turned around and said, Palace Master, these 2 are Yu Qianxiu and Miss Zi. You see? Bu Yunxiao glanced at the 2 and his gloomy face immediately changed into a smile. He cupped his hands and said, I happen to have something to do. Sorry for the delay. Then he turned around and said to the old man next to him, 5th junior brother, take the 2 guests to rest. Don't neglect them. I'll go see master and come back soon. The fifth junior brother nodded and raised his hand to Yu Qianqiu and Zi. He said with a smile, please follow me. There's no need to trouble yourself. Yu Qianqiu bowed to Bu Yunxiao and said, Palace Master Bu, Zi and I have just joined the Cultivation Alliance. Since the Cultivation Alliance is in trouble, we should do our best to help. Since Senior Qiu is going to the 100 Flowers Valley, we decided to go with Senior Qiu. He didn't want to come to the 10,000 demons in the first place. Not only did he not get any benefits, he might even be schemed against by others. If it wasn't for Qiu Wuyuan, he wouldn't have come. Now he found an excuse to leave. Bu Yunxiao pondered for a moment before he nodded and said, if that's the case, I won't force you. After this is over, I hope the two of you can give me face and come to my myriad demons palace again. I want to apologize for my poor hospitality this time. Palace Master, you're too kind. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands and said. At the side, Qiu Wuyuan seemed to be getting impatient. He waved his hand and yelled, let's go. He and the 4 generals of the Mo family shot into the sky first. Yu Qianqiu also jumped onto his flying sword and chased after them with Zi. Yu Qianqiu. Bu Yunxiao stared at the figures flying away and mumbled a few words. Then he shot into the deep mountains. A few figures flew across the sky. Qiu Wuyuan and the other 4 gradually pulled away from Yu Qianqiu and Zi. From this, one could see the difference in cultivation between Yu Qianqiu and them. Of course, it wasn't that Zi couldn't fly faster. It was because she had been accompanying Yu Qianqiu the whole time. Brother Yu, it's an emergency. I'll be going first. Qiu Wuyuan's voice came from the sky. Then the 5 in front sped up again. They immediately left the 2 behind further and further behind. Damn it. If you want to leave, then leave. Why are you shouting so loudly? Are you trying to bully me because I can't fly fast? Yu Qianqiu turned his head and looked at Zi. Luckily, Zi didn't care whether she was fast or slow. He slightly regretted that he didn't bring the whole flying instrument. Although it couldn't catch up to the speed of a tribulation-passing cultivator, it was at least faster than him. Moreover, with Zi controlling it, he could rest in peace. He had been flying around in the sky for the past few days and didn't really land. However, he immediately dismissed the idea. It seemed that Zi didn't know the way. It would be troublesome if she flew further and further away. Ever since Zi followed him, she would ask questions at the beginning. Now, no matter where they went, she would look around with her eyes wide open. It was as if she wanted to memorize the terrain of every place she passed. What a stupid idea. Yu Qianqiu found it funny and didn't say anything. The 2 of them flew at a moderate speed. Finally, they arrived at the 100 Flowers Valley before sunset. Yu Qianqiu took out the 100 Flowers Valley entry jade archive and brought Zi in. Then he made an entry jade archive for Zi at the city gate. Zi held it in her hand like it was a treasure and looked at it. Then she said to Yu Qianqiu, thank you. Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. Then he remembered that ever since he brought her out of the purple bamboo forest in the southern sea, this was the first time she had received something that belonged to her. Thinking about how this girl had helped him earn 50 million, Yu Qianqiu felt a little guilty. He decided that tonight he wouldn't care about anything else. He would be extravagant just for this girl. He couldn't let the horse run away without feeding it grass, could he? As soon as they arrived at the 100 Flowers Valley, many people immediately recognized Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu didn't care. He brought Zi straight to the best restaurant in the area, the 100 Flowers House. After entering, he knocked on the counter and said, give me the best private room with a view to the night view of the 100 Flowers Valley. Give me the best dishes and wine. The innkeeper was obviously a newcomer. He didn't know who Yu Qianqiu was. After looking at the ordinary clothes Yu Qianqiu was wearing, he smiled and said, the best private room we have here plus the best dishes and wine will cost at least 1,000 high-grade spirit stones. Are you sure you want it? 1,000 high-grade spirit stones? Ziyi's eyes widened. She quickly tugged at Yu Qianqiu and said, that much? Let's find a cheaper room. Yu Qianqiu wasn't afraid of people being mean to him. He could be even meaner than them. However, he couldn't stand people being nice to him. After hearing Ziyi's words, Yu Qianqiu immediately turned around and slammed his palm on the counter. With a bang sound, he directly collapsed the counter. He shouted in a deep voice, are you afraid that I can't afford it? Ziyi was stunned. She didn't know why he was so angry. The innkeeper saw that the counter had been destroyed. Wasn't this causing trouble? His face immediately darkened. He said sternly, what are you trying to do? Someone actually dared to cause trouble at the 100 Flowers house in the 100 Flowers Valley. There were many people inside and outside the store who came to watch the show. Chapter 385. Isn't that Yu Qianqiu? So it's that madman. No wonder. Hearing that, Yu Qianqiu, who was already in a bad mood, immediately took out a big black machete from his storage bag. Wherever the blade pointed, everyone retreated. Who's tired of living? Why don't you say a few words for me? I'll make sure you're satisfied. Yu Qianqiu said expressionlessly with the machete in hand. No one said anything. Sure enough, the bigger the machete, the more intimidating it was. There was an old man in the store who recognized Yu Qianqiu. He quickly whispered a few words into the manager's ear. However, it seemed like the manager had already heard everyone's words, especially that rather unique machete, which was unique in the cultivation world. It was hard not to know who the person in front of him was. Yu Qianqiu turned the machete around and pointed it at the manager. The manager's expression changed. He immediately smiled and said, "So it's Mr. Yu. It's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. If you have any orders, just tell me. As long as I can do it, I'll do my best." The manager had no choice but to admit defeat. This guy was famous for being a madman in the cultivation world. Was there anyone he didn't dare to hit? No. Was there anyone he didn't dare to kill? No. Even the dignified sect master Ong Guangceng was killed by him, but he was still alive and kicking here. So what if he broke a counter? What was the point of a small manager's face? The blade of that big black machete was just a little bit away from pointing at the manager's head. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and said, "You're a snob. If you don't want me to tear down the 100 Flowers residence, hurry up and prepare a private room." Yu Qianqiu knew how to play this game. Some people weren't afraid of good people, but they were afraid of hooligans. Since his reputation wasn't good, he might as well be unreasonable. The onlookers at the side were convinced. This guy was an out-and-out madman. He came all the way to the 100 Flowers Valley to tear down the 100 Flowers Palace. There would probably be a good show to watch. It was Ziyi's first time seeing such a bandit side of Yu Qianqiu. She was really a little surprised. No need to prepare, no need to prepare. There's an empty private room upstairs. Follow me. The manager carefully moved away from the machete and led the way upstairs. Before Yu Qianqiu went up the stairs, he coldly swept his eyes over the crowd. They all acted as if they didn't care about him and dispersed. But after they left, they gathered at a place not far from the 100 Flowers house and waited, ready to watch the show. Sure enough, as soon as Yu Qianqiu went upstairs, an attendant immediately ran out of the store and flew towards the Flower Palace. Everyone's eyes lit up and they continued to wait. Jianghu led the two of them to the private room on the top floor and asked them to wait for a moment before he turned and ran down the stairs. The manager here elegant and elegance AA there's AA there. TAA restaurant. Ziyi asked curiously, "Is this really a restaurant?" What an idiotic question. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. He walked to the window and pushed it open. A cool breeze blew in. It was mixed with the fragrance of the 100 Flowers Valley's flowers. Ziyi also came after smelling the fragrance. The two of them stood at the window. The sun had just set. A patch of burning clouds dyed the sky red. The mountains were hazy under the twilight. Tired birds flew across the sky and returned to the forest. Downstairs was the market of the 100 Flowers Valley. Although it was already night, it was still bustling with activity. The commoners in the cultivation world lit up their fluorescent stones. They didn't want to give up the chance to earn spirit stones at night. All of this was new to Ziyi, who stayed in the South Sea purple bamboo forest for a long time. She couldn't get enough of it. She pointed at those people and asked, "What are they doing?" "They're making money like us, of course," Yu Qianqiu replied. "Can we make money like that?" Ziyi asked doubtfully. Then she nodded and said, "Then let's not leave here. We'll make money here first. It's a waste of time to run around all day. We don't know when we'll be able to complete Senior Bai's trust." Yu Qianqiu turned to look at her. It was the first time he found this one-track-minded girl so cute. He smiled and said, "They want to live a peaceful life. So they're making a small amount of money. But we're making a lot of money. If you follow me, you won't have to make these small amounts of money." Baihua Fairy and her daughter Yan Zixia of Baihua Palace were worried about Yan Bugue and his men. Although they were stopped by the people from the Cultivation Alliance, and Qiu Wuyuan and the others who came in time to persuade them to leave, Yan Bugue kept saying that he would come every day until the mother and daughter agreed to meet him. The mother and daughter were really tired. But before the first wave subsided, another wave arose. A disciple of Baihua Palace quickly came and reported, "Palace Master, someone from Baihua Palace reported that Yu Qianqiu just caused trouble at Baihua Palace. He even broke the counter. How should we deal with him?" "Yu Qianqiu? Bai Hua Fairy was a little surprised and asked, "The one who held the blade drawing ceremony, Yu Qianqiu?" The disciple bowed and said, "It should be him. Someone reported that he even took out that blade to scare everyone. He's very shameless, so it can't be anyone else but him." The mother and daughter exchanged glances. Just a few days ago they received a message from Ma Jiugu, saying that if they ever run into any trouble in the future, they can look for Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu wouldn't shirk their responsibility and would have a way to solve it for them. The mother and daughter were still confused by this. Although Yu Qianqiu was quite famous in the cultivation world, what problem could he possibly help them solve? But Ma Jiugu wasn't one to speak carelessly. Now, before they even looked for him to solve their problem, he's already causing trouble. "I'll go take a look," Xianxia said. As she was about to leave, her mother called out, "Xia, it's best if you don't go out. If you run into your father, you'll be in trouble again." Bai Hua Fairy waved her hand at the disciple and said, "Leave. Don't look into Yu Qianqiu's matter. All of his expenses at Bai Hua Palace will be free." The disciple was a bit surprised but still followed her words and left. Xia's eyes flickered as she looked outside the palace, not knowing what she was thinking. After enjoying the scenery for a while, Yu Qianqiu still didn't see any food being served. Just as he was feeling strange, he suddenly noticed that many people downstairs were looking at them as if they were watching a show. Yu Qianqiu's expression suddenly changed. This shopkeeper was clearly stalling for time. He might have gone to Bai Hua Palace to look for reinforcements. He slammed his palm on the windowsill and said in a low voice, "Do you really think I don't dare to burn down Bai Hua Palace?" Ziyi, who was admiring the scenery outside, was surprised, not knowing why he suddenly got angry. At this time the shopkeeper's voice came from outside, "Mister, don't worry, the food is here." As soon as the shopkeeper came in, a few waiters came in with trays of food and wine, quickly arranging them on the table. Yu Qianqiu stared at him and asked, "Why are you so late? Do you want to do something?" "Mister, you misunderstand." The shopkeeper bowed with a smile. "We just received an order from the palace lord. The palace lord said to treat you well, and all the expenses of Bai Hua Palace will be waived. You see, since the palace lord has already given the order, we naturally don't dare to delay, so the preparation time is a bit long." For this shopkeeper to be sent to be the shopkeeper of Bai Hua Palace, he wasn't completely useless, he was quite good with words. When Yu Qianqiu heard about the palace lord of Bai Hua Palace, he immediately remembered Ma Jiugu's request. It would be a bit too much if he continued to make trouble. Seeing that the food and wine were already served, he waved his hand, "All of you can leave. Thank the palace lord for her kindness. I will thank her in person if there's a chance." "Okay, enjoy." The shopkeeper nodded and bowed, then led the waiters away. Yu Qianqiu walked around the table full of food and wine, and found that the dishes were exquisite as expected. He waved his hand at Ziyi, who was looking at him, "Eat." He took the lead to sit down and opened his mouth to eat. It would be a waste not to eat something that didn't cost money. "Shopkeeper just said that it's free, does it cost money?" Ziyi sat down and asked. With food in his mouth, Yu Qianqiu nodded repeatedly, "It's free, eat as much as you want, otherwise it will be a waste." Hearing that it really didn't cost money, Ziyi's eyes lit up, and she immediately didn't stand on ceremony. This was what she learned from Yu Qianqiu. Don't be polite when you shouldn't be, otherwise, you would be letting yourself down. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Yu Qianqiu burped, and when he saw Ziyi stop, he was stunned. Only now did he remember something. It seemed that every time he ate, as long as he was still eating, this girl would also not stop, but as soon as he stopped, she would immediately stop eating. It seemed like this girl's appetite wasn't small. She could even keep up with his trip. Yu Qianqiu was happy. He originally wanted to be extravagant for this girl, but he didn't expect that the food and wine would be free, then he would make up for it in other ways. He stood up and smiled, "Let's go, I'll bring you out for a walk." Ziyi nodded repeatedly and stood up as well. She loved to walk around, but it was a pity that during this period of time, she had been flying non-stop in the sky. When the two of them went downstairs, they realized that the broken counter had been replaced with a new one. It was indeed fast. Yu Qianqiu walked over and knocked on the counter and said, "Shopkeeper, reserve 2 good rooms for me, I might have to stay here for a period of time." All right. The shopkeeper hurriedly agreed. This guy couldn't be provoked. Even the higher-ups didn't pursue the matter. What else could he say? After the two of them walked out of the 100-flower pavilion, the shopkeepers of the 4 noble clans, who had been waiting outside for a long time, immediately came over to greet them. Yu Qianshou had a pleasant expression as he politely persuaded the four of them to return and continued strolling around with Ziyi. The people who were originally prepared to watch the show immediately dispersed in disappointment. They didn't expect that the 100 Flowers Palace actually didn't cause trouble for Yu Qianshou, and looking at how the shopkeepers of the four major families treated Yu Qianshou, it seemed like the rumor that the four major families and Yu Qianshou were on the same side was indeed true. The prosperity of the shop market was quite tempting to Ziyi. Seeing every novel thing, she couldn't help but stop to take a look and touch it. She was a little reluctant to let go. Yu Qianshou was prepared to spend money tonight, so he directly said to the shopkeeper, "I'll buy it, how much?" 10 mid-grade spirit stones. The shopkeeper replied, "Isn't the price a little high?" Yu Qianshou frowned. "Mr. Yu, look at what you're saying, I'd fool anyone but you." The shopkeeper thought to himself, "You even dared to smash the 100 Flowers house? How would my small stall dare to provoke you?" There was no more nonsense. Yu Qianshou also wouldn't bother with these small shop owners. He directly paid and took the things. So on and so forth, almost every stall had similar conversations. Ziyi stopped halfway and asked suspiciously, "Why does everyone here seem to know you?" Yu Qianshou's mouth twitched. He refused to answer this question. He directed Ziyi's thoughts back to shopping. He followed behind her, holding a storage bag in his hand. As long as Ziyi stopped to look at or touch something, he could only do three things: ask for the price, pay, and pack the things. It seemed like women were born to be shopaholics, especially when there was a man who was willing to pay with money following them. After shopping at the stalls, the spirit stones were spent like flowing water. The things in the shops were much more expensive than the things in the stalls. Some of them easily cost hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of high-grade spirit stones. Ziyi didn't care whether she could use it or not. As long as she liked it, she would subconsciously nod at Yu Qianshou. She didn't think about how much it cost anyway. Someone was paying. Yu Qianshou himself also couldn't remember how many types of things he sold, regardless of the size of the items. In any case, he bought almost everything in the stalls and shops. He even filled up 2 storage bags. It was already late at night. There was no more shopping. Ziyi just remembered that she seemed to have bought a lot of things. She looked at Yu Qianshou embarrassedly and asked weakly, "It seems like you spent a lot of money. So, isn't it a little too late to ask this now?" Yu Qianshou's gaze had already answered her question. Ziyi became even more embarrassed. She said embarrassedly, "I really didn't mean it." "And I know you didn't mean it." Yu Qianshou handed over the 3 storage bags and smiled. "Actually, I didn't buy much, I just filled up these 3 storage bags." Ziyi received the 3 storage bags and used her divine sense to look at them. She was shocked. She didn't expect to buy so many things just by casually strolling around. Carrying the 3 storage bags, she didn't know what to do. She once again weakly asked, "How much did you spend in total?" "It's okay. Consider these things as a gift from me. You can earn more money after you spend it as long as you are happy." Yu Qianshou smiled. Seeing that Yu Qianshou didn't have any intention of blaming her, Ziyi hugged the storage bags and nodded vigorously. "And I will definitely help you earn money." She happily put away the 3 storage bags. Today could be said to be a happy day. These words made Yu Qianshou happy. He liked to hear this the most. He felt that the money spent today was worth it. Just as he was about to bring Ziyi back to 100 Flowers House to rest, he suddenly saw an old acquaintance from supporting Immortal Island, Xianhui, walking towards him. This fellow used to eat and drink with him in the past, so Xianhui couldn't help but nod and smile. "Long time no see, how have you been?" Ziyi looked at him curiously. He really had a lot of acquaintances. Xianhui had hung out with him for a few days. They could be considered old friends. He wasn't like the others. He cupped his fists and said happily, "No matter how good I am, I can't compare to you. I heard that you came to 100 Flowers House and caused a ruckus the moment you arrived. You didn't come here just to ask about this, did you?" Yu Qianshou asked. Xianhui shook his head and said with a serious expression, "Just now, the Cultivation Alliance received a challenge jade archive sent by Yanbugue. All the sects in the Cultivation Alliance have received the notice. Elder Quan asked us to inform the other individual cultivators who have already joined the Cultivation Alliance and are in the 100 Flowers Valley to meet at the Cultivation Alliance tomorrow to discuss this matter. I just heard that you are here. The leader of the Moon Clan has already vouched for you. You are now also a member of the Cultivation Alliance. Because we are familiar with each other, I specially came to find you to inform you of this matter." Yanbugue is challenging the Cultivation Alliance? Yu Qianshou frowned and asked again to confirm, "Are you going to meet at the Cultivation Alliance tomorrow?" "Yes. Yeah. Brother Yu, I won't say any more. I still have to inform the others. We can talk about this later." Xianhui cupped his fists and left. "What does challenging the Cultivation Alliance have to do with me?" Yu Qianqiu muttered softly, turned his head and said to Ziyi, "Go back and rest." After that he led Ziyi, who was like an obedient child, back to Hundred Flowers' house. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.